Chapter 201, Return to Nuceria. Mortal Auxiliary Army Axis had been away for over a month, but returned a few days earlier than planned. The Morning Star closed on Nuceria, and then slipped into stealth, hiding among the stars. Axis first visited Chronomancer Grandu's residence to check on his research. Grandu, a noble time Necron of the Space Necrons dynasty, was friendly enough, but as for tangible results, there were none. "So you haven't produced anything this whole time?" Axis asked. "Be patient, Lord Axis," Grandu replied with a shrug. "The first prototype teleportation bracelet is almost ready. It's phased teleportation technology. I'm taking a huge risk. If the Space Necrons find out, they'll hunt me." Axis's expression hardened. From a highborn time Necron, he had become a prisoner, then was controlled, and now forced into research. Once exposed, Grandu would face utter destruction. Still, he had followed Axis this far. "All right," Axis said. "I'll give you time, but no more than a year. I need to see results." 3 years, Lord Axis," Grandu bargained, "and I'm not entirely useless. I helped you unlock that cipher box, and the spatial tech inside is quite advanced. I can take time to study its spatial storage. Wouldn't you want that capability?" Axis considered. "Fine. 3 years, but within that time, you must finish the first prototype teleportation bracelet and make measurable progress on the spatial storage technology." "I understand, Lord Axis. I won't be negligent," Grandu answered cautiously. Axis nodded, turned to leave the Time Necron's lab, and had the Morning Star summon Harlequin Cassandra. "Lord Axis, did you call?" Cassandra asked, kneeling on one knee. "Yes. Cassandra, you'll stay aboard the ship for now and continue training. If anything happens, I'll contact you through the communicator. Later, I'll arrange a human identity for you so you can hide among my forces." "I understand, Lord Axis. I'll remain on the ship." Axis nodded, gave a few more orders to the Morning Star, and then used psychic teleportation back to Nuceria. It was the middle of the night. Kasha, exhausted after a long day, was asleep when Axis's sudden arrival startled her awake. She leapt out of bed and reached for the psychic staff beside her, wary of the stranger in her room. "Don't be nervous, Kasha. It's me," Axis said with a smile, waving his hand. When she recognized him, she relaxed. "You scared me. Axis, you're back? Weren't you supposed to be gone another 10 or 20 days? How did the mission go?" "Any problems?" Kasha asked, lowering the staff. By the Morning Star's warp speed, Axis should have had at least 20 more days before returning. Everything went smoothly, better than expected, actually. There was a pleasant surprise, Axis said, sitting on the bed and recounting how the Eldar Laughing God had invited him to the Black Library and granted him access to the webway. "You're serious? You actually met an Eldar god? And he let you use the webway? That's what my father worked so hard to gain," Kasha exclaimed. The very thing her father had struggled for had been handed to Axis on their first meeting, an unfair disparity she felt acutely. Axis shook his head. "The Eldar don't truly own the webway. They only have usage rights. The species that built the webway was far more powerful and advanced. That's why what remains is so dilapidated after 60 million years without maintenance. I think this laughing god saw an opportunity. Befriending me is an early investment that could pay off." Of course, the laughing god had made a calculated choice. Attacking Axis would invite the attention of the human emperor. A lone Eldar god had no capital to risk. Cooperation made more sense than confrontation. "This is good," Kasha said. "Maybe we can map the webway. My father always said that if humans want to use the webway, you need it combined with our hyperspace engine and a detailed map. Otherwise, the webway is impossible to navigate. The Laughing God allowed me to use the webway, but every trip is escorted by his Harlequin. I can't chart it, and the usage right is personal. It's limited to me. It can't be used for mass troop transports either. We could map it secretly. Do I look like a cartographer? And the webway is far more complex than you imagine." Axis chose not to mention the war god's fragment. Its connection to his potential divinity and his grasp of Super Saiyan God was something he wasn't ready to reveal. "All right, how did your meetings with Sanguinius and Magnus go?" Kasha asked. "Well," Axis said, "the second psychic tree has been planted successfully. It produced over 700 divine tree fruits, and their quality is much better than the first harvest. I also obtained a large number of psychic tomes from the Black Library and gave them to Magnus. Once he studied them, He'll compile the Book of Magnus. You can borrow it. If you have questions, communicate with him by psychic link. That's excellent. Magnus is a master of psychic arts, so you solved the problem with Sanguinius's gene seed. Yes, I refined a perfect gene seed and cultivated a viable offspring for him. The Blood Angels are now in a similar position to the Space Wolves. The risk of vampiric degeneration has dropped significantly. Kasha nodded. How has Nuceria developed while you were away? Has Gilliman's delegation arrived? That's what I was about to ask. You returned at the right time. Gilliman's adoptive mother arrived yesterday with over 400 administrative experts. I've arranged accommodations. We'll meet them tomorrow morning. Gilliman was sincere. He sent top-tier administrators. They should be a tremendous help to Nuceria. Good. I'll meet Gilliman's adoptive mother with you. Any issues within the Legion while I was gone? No problems. You've only been away a little over a month. The teams on distant campaigns have sent back positive reports. Your gene seed offspring have already conquered several planets. Even without you leading them, their advance in the Great Crusade is at least as fast as other gene father-led contingents, maybe faster. Axis allowed himself a small breath of relief. Then Kasha added, one more thing. Your biological offspring now number 210,000, and the mortal auxiliary forces are in the tens of millions. One planet like Nuceria can handle Space Marine recruitment, but it can't shoulder all the other burdens. We need to expand the mortal auxiliary army by at least 200 million to be sufficient. During the Great Crusade, Space Marines are the shock and decapitation force. The real siege and occupation work falls to the mortal auxiliaries. All tax revenue from conquered planets will be used for military expenses, Axis said. During the Great Crusade, those planets will be sources of recruits and taxes. Kasha smiled. These administrative talents will be invaluable. The Imperium's worlds fell broadly into three categories: forging worlds, agricultural worlds, and hive worlds. Between them, they supplied the Imperium with arms, food, and manpower. That will work, Kasha said. I'll designate several suitable forging worlds to produce weapons and equipment, and the hive worlds can provide a steady stream of troops. She nodded, and the two of them talked a while longer about the banquet tomorrow and plans for future recruitment. Axis lay back, planning to rest before dealing with Nuceria's affairs in the morning. Kasha, lying beside him, suddenly hesitated as if she wanted to say something. Ever since Axis had returned, she'd felt an inexplicable pull toward him. He'd become, somehow, impossibly attractive in her eyes. You must have been lonely sleeping alone this past month, she murmured. No problem. I'll do my wifely duty tonight. How could he refuse? Kasha smiled in satisfaction. 1,000 words omitted here. The next morning, Axis appeared in public in formal attire. With Kasha at his side, he received Ms. Uden, Guilliman's housekeeper, the woman often spoken of as the Primarch's adoptive mother, and the internal affairs specialists she had brought. Greetings, Mr. Axis, she said. I am the Primarch's housekeeper. I have been ordered to place these administrative talents at your disposal. I hope you will tolerate me for the next 10 years. Miss Uden never used the title adoptive mother in official contexts. In Nucerian terms, she was the housekeeper. She approached with measured grace, bowed, and extended a hand. At the first sight of Axis, something stirred in her that she had not felt since her old master died a century ago. For reasons she could not explain, the tall, handsome man before her suddenly went from an object of respect to an object of desire. Her heart raced, her face flushed. It was absurd. It was their first meeting. Nuceria is grateful for your arrival and for Guilliman's support, Axis said, extending his hand in turn. I've arranged accommodations for you. I hope you enjoy your stay for the next 10 years. The gesture made everyone present awkward. In certain Western formalities, when a lady extends her hand, it is often offered to be kissed on the back of the hand, not simply shaken. Axis, a certain scion unfamiliar with such niceties, had no idea, and besides, he had no intention of kissing the hand of a woman who had lived a century. Mr. Axis, I expected you to be as tall as the other Primarchs, Ms. Uden said quickly. I didn't realize you're about the size of a normal man. I'm different from the other gene seed Primarchs, Axis replied with a smile. I was born naturally and later underwent the Emperor's modifications. Miss Uden's gaze lingered. It made him slightly uneasy. In any case, I think our administrative staff can start immediately to help develop Nuceria. I've brought talent in economics, architecture, and agriculture. They can assist on every front. Let's start tomorrow, Axis said with a smile. Today is a welcome banquet. Miss Uden curtsied, eyes unusually bright, and left with a flushed face. If she had stayed any longer, she feared she would lose her composure. That night at the banquet, something strange happened. Many of the specialists Gilliman had sent were women, and almost without exception, they became overwhelmingly fond of Axis. They came to introduce themselves in a steady stream. A few of the bolder ladies even invited him to dance. Some of the maids serving the guests, including the most beautiful among them, cast glances at him that were more than polite. Axis found himself increasingly uncomfortable. The situation grew absurd. He was surrounded by women whose gazes and behavior had shifted from respect to open flirtation. After the banquet, Axis brought Ms. Uden and Kasha back to his private chamber. "You really don't like these banquet settings, do you?" Kasha muttered. "All right, Miss Uden," Axis said. "Sit cross-legged here and place one hand on mine. I'll use chi energy to cleanse you. It will take about 20 minutes each day. You're free the rest of the time." "Understood, Mr. Axis." Ms. Uden sat opposite him, cross-legged. She could smell him, a strong, pleasant masculine scent she had not experienced in a century. Simply sitting across from Axis made her blush. When their palms touched, her body trembled. Her face flushed deep red, her breath hitched, and her eyes seemed to water. She began to sweat so heavily that the cushion beneath her soaked through. She looked as if she had just bathed, her skin luminous. A powerful, almost overwhelming desire overwhelmed her. She wanted him to hold her. Ms. Uden clutched at her skirts as if to keep herself from giving in. Axis felt uncomfortable and embarrassed. "I'm sorry," Ms. Uden stammered. "Mr. Axis, Miss Kasha, could you two step outside for a moment?" Axis rose silently, displeased, and led Kasha from the room. He did not want to remain another minute. With his sensitive chi perception, he smelled something wrong, a heavy, fishy scent that betrayed excessive female hormonal secretion. "Please, make yourself comfortable, Ms. Uden." He left the door closed behind them. Once they were out, Axis exhaled. The smell in that room had nearly made him sick. His goodwill toward Ms. Uden had dropped to nothing. "My wife is right here," he thought. "You're in heat, and you can't even pick an appropriate occasion. It's like you haven't seen a man in a century." "How shameless," Kasha hissed. "That adoptive mother of Gilliman, she's no different from those planetary nobles." Her eyes were sharp. If Axis had to endure 20 minutes of that every day, she found it intolerable. "Something's wrong," Kasha said. "Haven't you noticed how strange today was? At the banquet, it was like you were the main event. Every woman, even the waitstaff, looked at you differently." "Now that you mention it," Axis frowned. "Some of those maids had seen me before. Why have their eyes completely changed since I returned? Before, their looks had been full of reverence, respect. Now they were filled with lust. Every female administrative official sent by Gilliman had barely taken her eyes off him." "Axis," Kasha said, "when I looked at you last night, I felt different. You gave me an extremely attractive feeling. It made my heart race." She and Axis had been married for decades. That heady fluttering of first love had long since faded. Yet she had felt it again, unmistakably last night. "Are you saying there's something wrong with me?" Axis asked. "You're different," Kasha replied grimly. "Since you returned, you've become too charming. Wherever you go, women lose the ability to control themselves. That isn't good." Axis hesitated, then decided to tell her the whole story. "There's something I haven't told you because I didn't want to worry you," he said. "I killed that Slaanesh great demon. Magnus opened a warp rift, and Slaanesh sent a great daemon. I killed it, and then returned to the ship. I also dispelled the Slaanesh consciousness from Cassandra." Kasha's face grew even more severe. She took him to the training ground and began to examine him with her psychic powers. "I shouldn't have any warp corruption," Axis said. "I checked myself thoroughly after we defeated Slaanesh. Ordinary curses would be suppressed by my chi energy. They wouldn't last." Kasha didn't reply at once. When she finally spoke, her voice was hard. "You haven't been infected by a chaos corruption curse, but you have been touched by a blessing. Not a curse, but a blessing from a true warp god. Blessing? Axis repeated in surprise. You mean Slaanesh blessed me? Isn't Slaanesh a chaos god? Yes, Kasha said. Slaanesh is a chaos god, the god of pleasure, love, and beauty. He's also greedy for worship and sensations. This blessing would specifically amplify charm, desire, attraction. That's why every woman in the room was drawn to you. If I'm right, wherever you go, you'll continue to attract the opposite sex. How could that be? I came here with that Eldar woman, Axis said. If this were some all-encompassing effect, she should have been affected too. It's hardly surprising she wasn't, Kasha said coldly. The Eldar don't see humans as equals. To them, we're like wild monkeys. An Eldar woman wouldn't fall for a wild monkey. Axis let out a bitter laugh. You call this a blessing? It's called a blessing because of its nature, Kasha replied. A curse uses warp energy to corrupt, to seize your soul or body. This is malicious. A blessing from a true god is different. It's an imposition of a god's favor. Chi energy resists warp curses very effectively, but a god's blessing operates differently. Slaanesh couldn't curse you through the warp because of your chi defenses, so it bestowed a blessing instead, one that maximizes attraction. Wouldn't a curse be worse? Axis asked. A curse would be far worse, Kasha said. If it were a proper Slaanesh curse, it wouldn't just affect women. Men, beasts, any living creature might become driven toward you. It would destroy everything around you. This is Slaanesh's way of getting what he wants without directly corrupting you. Amplify what he presides over, love and beauty, and watch the chaos that follows. Axis absorbed that grim conclusion. A god of the warp had touched him, not by wrecking him outright, but by blessing him with an afflicted charm. Wherever he went, he would be a magnet for desire. And with the Primarchs and the court watching, with his wife at his side, and with Nuceria to govern, he had no idea how he would live with the consequences. Chapter 203, Fascination. Welcome to the Palace of Pleasure. Damn it. Think of something, Kasha. I have to break this damn blessing. Mr. Axis snapped, visibly irritated. The so-called blessing of love was nothing but a nuisance, especially for a Scion who hated messy problems. If it couldn't be undone, he swore he would stop showing up at public events. He would stick to his men and the Great Crusade with his gene seed progeny. Fighting was a Scion's favorite thing. I've only concluded, tentatively, that it's a blessing, Kasha said. What worries me more are the side effects. You know, Chaos Gods don't hand out favors without strings. Their blessings almost always come with curses. For example, they might make some women fall hopelessly, even madly, in love with you, while you don't care for them at all. And if that love turns into rejection, it can become infinite hate. Those women will stop at nothing to get to you. The timing had been uncanny. The effect had flared the instant Guilliman's adoptive mother visited. Kasha suspected Slaanesh had chosen that precise moment, and the main target of the curse, she believed, was Ms. Udun, Guilliman's adoptive mother. The other women at the event had shown momentary attraction at most. Once Mr. Axis made it clear he wasn't interested, they had politely backed off. They still retained self-control. For them, the curse had merely amplified Mr. Axis's appeal a little. Miss Udun, however, had been hit the hardest. She had left the first meeting with her eyes dazed, already smitten. It had only been one encounter. With a few more, Kasha shuddered to imagine how obsessed the woman would become. Mr. Axis, knowing his nature, would not reciprocate. He might even feel revulsion. Love in that case would become hatred, and if she returned to Guilliman inflamed, she could stir trouble that would make life difficult for him. But why target you? Mr. Axis asked. Guilliman is a Primarch, but he's no match for me in combat. If Slaanesh wanted to deal with me, wouldn't a direct approach make more sense? It looks like the god picked a pawn, Kasha said. Her connection to Guilliman makes her useful. Slaanesh probably knows which Primarchs are likely to betray the Emperor and is trying to widen the rift. Or it's a spiteful move, revenge without better options. Either way, it's malicious and specific, so the maids and attendants were only mildly affected. Miss Udun's the primary target? Mr. Axis summed up. Exactly. And that means you must never let her see you while you strengthen her. Do the key work from a different room. Mr. Axis could remove many curses personally, but a true god's blessing was another matter. Chaos gods seldom offered pure gifts. There were always strings attached. This Slanesh blessing had been engineered to be especially pernicious. "All right, we'll observe for a few days," Mr. Axis said. "For now, I'll avoid meeting Ms. Udun. I'll strengthen her remotely." With his control over Ki, Mr. Axis could channel life energy into another person's body from over 10 meters away. The effect was slightly diminished at range, but it would be enough. Miss Udun's primary objective was a longer life. As soon as her body could process the spirit tree fruit, she would gain more longevity. "I'll discuss it with the Emperor privately and find a way to remove the blessing," Kasha promised. The Emperor, when informed, treated the matter seriously, yet he was engaged in a war that would keep him occupied for at least 3 years. He asked Mr. Axis to be careful until he could personally attend the issue. Mr. Axis accepted. The blessing of the god of love, so long as he avoided Miss Udun, was a manageable annoyance rather than a real threat. For the next months, Mr. War Axis kept a low social profile, appearing only before his gene seed progeny. Kasha handled banquets and other formalities. Every time he strengthened Ms. Udun, he did so from a separate room. She was disappointed. Was it because she had lost herself at their first meeting and found his avoidance baffling? The more impossible something seemed, the more it gnawed at her. Under Mr. Axis's distant tutelage and with Kasha's assistance, Ms. Udun's conditioning progressed quickly. Within months, her fitness approached that of a regular space marine, and then she drank a diluted dose of spirit tree fruit juice for the first time. The fruit's essence revitalized her completely. The 40-year-old frame she had carried melted away into the figure of a 30-year-old. Her skin smoothed and brightened, her golden hair gleamed. Receiving Mr. Axis's key through her body without ever seeing him, however, left a burning, unsatisfied longing in her chest. They continued the regimen methodically. Each month she underwent strengthening and then took another dose of the fruit, and each month her body and vitality improved. In the blink of a year, she had been transformed from a 40-something matron into a striking woman of roughly 20. Kasha kept the Emperor apprised. He reiterated his promise to intervene in 3 years. One afternoon, after another round of conditioning, Ms. Udun finally spoke up. "Miss Kasha, is Mr. Axis busy? I've been here over a year and have only seen him once, on the second day. I haven't seen him since." "Don't read more into it than necessary," Kasha replied smoothly. "Mr. Axis is very busy, so is your adopted son, Guilliman. The 12th Legion keeps him occupied." "It can't be so dire that he can't even grant me a meeting," Miss Udun protested. "I've regained my youth. I want to thank him in person." Kasha shook her head. "There's no need. This is an arrangement between Mr. Guilliman and Mr. Axis. You did what was required. Your administrative staff helped greatly. There's no need for a personal audience." Miss Udun snorted in anger and left. That night, lying in her guest room, she tossed and turned. Memory after memory of the man filled her thoughts. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her into sleep. In her dream, she found herself standing before an enormous palace washed in royal purple. Lavishly dressed, barely clad attendants bowed low as she entered. At the far end of the hall, a man stood, impossibly handsome. When she saw him, she felt herself fall completely under his spell. "Welcome, lady," a voice purred. "Welcome to the land of ultimate bliss, the palace of pleasure." Chapter 204, Prince of Dark Pleasure. Where is this? Why am I suddenly here? Who are you? Miss Udun's voice wavered, despite the man's impossible beauty. He could have been every woman's dream made flesh, but she kept a sliver of caution. "Does who I am really matter? You are here because you were drawn by the power of this place. I can feel the desire inside you, how much you crave," the man said as he rose and walked toward her. Every step he took seemed measured, suffused with a fatal, intoxicating grace. I should probably leave." Miss Udun's last shred of reason urged her away. Everything about the place was uncanny. Her instincts screamed at her to run. "Ha ha! I wouldn't devour a beautiful lady like you." The man clapped his hands, and a host of maidservants swept into the hall, carrying trays of exquisite dishes, laying them out before her. A dining table. When had one appeared? "A guest has arrived. Please stay for a meal. Let me properly entertain you," he said with a captivating smile. "You are one of the few who come to my palace." Reluctantly, Miss Udun nodded and allowed the maidservants to seat her. She tasted the first delicacy, then another, each bite more heavenly than the last. Her taste buds seemed to ignite. Try it, the finest food in the universe. I only take the best. Imperfections annoy me, he said, gesturing as dancers moved gracefully nearby. Ms. Uden couldn't understand the dance, but every motion was hypnotically beautiful. When she took a sip of the wine he offered, it was like warmth spreading through her, mingling with the sweetness on her tongue. Isn't it wonderful? The wine here is even better. He poured crimson liquid into her glass. This is a rare vintage, made from very special things. Try it, Miss Uden. You won't be disappointed. She emptied the glass and felt the liquid settle warmly, filling her with a pleasant, powerful sensation. It's delicious. Thank you for your hospitality. May I ask your name? She asked, wiping her lips. A name isn't important. Call me Dream Lover if you like, he replied, raising his glass with a gentle smile. Dream Lover. I must be dreaming. Ms. Uden set her glass down and looked around with sudden clarity. She was on Nuceria. This had to be a dream. But if it was, why hadn't she woken? People wake from dreams, don't they? The thought nagged at her, but the man's calm assurance smoothed her worries away. Don't fret. Enjoy yourself. Everything here is perfect. Tonight you'll have the best food in the universe and the finest wine, he said. If it was a dream, she decided, she would enjoy it. She ate and drank. She laughed and danced with the elegant stranger. He was the prince from 1,000 fantasies, flawless and utterly alluring. Her small, lingering feelings for Axis dissolved like mist. All of Miss Uden's attention shifted to this dream lover. She left the hall at some point, intoxicated by the experience. After she left, the palace changed. The beautiful maidservants were no more. Where once were soft features were now twisted, succubus-like figures with goat hooves and bat wings, faces contorted and in some cases androgynous. The dishes had become grotesque, unidentifiable masses resembling organs, excrement, even brains. The wine had curdled into thick, foul blood. Master, why did you entertain a mortal woman so lavishly? What makes her worthy of your attention? One twisted succubus asked. This mortal woman herself is unimportant, the dream lover, Slaanesh, said. What matters is what she can bring me. Tomorrow I will invite her again. I understand, master. Why not corrupt her openly? The servants dared not ask. The master disliked questions. Miss Uden woke early the next morning, feeling oddly tired but elated. Yesterday's dream had been perfect. Magnificent food, exquisite wine, and the dream of dancing with a beautiful lover. She hummed as she went about the day. Axis seemed distant from her mind now, replaced by the man of her dream. The following night, she returned to the palace, and in that dream, she became an empress of an entire planet, wielding absolute authority over countless lives. The power was intoxicating, deciding fates with a word. Every dream thereafter escalated, empresses, courts, unimaginable luxuries. The lines between waking and sleeping blurred. Day by day, she visited that secret chamber to receive the showers of Axis's chi energy, never suspecting the source of her burgeoning fantasies. Axis noticed the change. Guilliman's adoptive mother no longer trailed him with longing, no longer watched him from afar. At first, he thought the curse was lifted, a blessing undone, and he was relieved. He did not know that Slaanesh had engineered her infatuation and its sudden evaporation as part of a plan. By pushing her toward obsession and then making her withdraw, Slaanesh ensured Axis would be repelled rather than drawn in. If Axis kept his distance, the chi energy he radiated couldn't probe deeply enough to reveal anything amiss. Only when Axis was thoroughly put off would the god have the opportunity to enact the next stage. Time passed. 2 years slipped by. Under Axis's leadership, the Legion and Nuceria prospered. Several planets in the star system were developed into mining worlds, and one was transformed by the Mechanicus into a small forging world to supply weaponry. Guilliman sent 2 more contingents of administrators to help Axis govern. The gene seed offspring spread across dozens of worlds, securing territories and replenishing the Legion with mortal recruits. The Golden Legion swelled, its ranks of space marines reached 240,000, and its name thundered across the galaxy. Axis's gene seed offspring became the main spear of the Great Crusade. Individually, each was a superior space marine, far beyond the norm. At some point, Axis noticed another change. He no longer seemed to attract the attentions of women. Had Slaanesh's blessing finally faded, he found the god increasingly inscrutable. That night, Axis received a psychic message from the Emperor. Axis, My visit may be delayed by a few years. I've discovered another gene seed Primarch. Are you holding up all right? No problem, and I've found that this so-called blessing, or curse, seems to have disappeared, Axis replied. Good. It may be that your chi energy has developed some resistance to the warp. Once I locate this Primarch, I'll come by for a full examination, the Emperor said. They spoke a while longer, then the psychic link dimmed. Axis was still pondering the implications when Kasha burst into the chamber, breathless and alarmed. Bad news, Axis. Gilliman's adoptive mother, Miss Uden, has gone missing. Gilliman's adoptive mother was missing. Why now, of all times? Kasha, don't panic yet. Have you searched everywhere? When did she disappear? Could she have just gone off somewhere to amuse herself? Mr. Axis asked. On Nuceria, Gilliman's adoptive mother lived with astonishing freedom. Apart from a few locked-down military bases, she was free to roam the planet. Mr. Axis hadn't abolished the gladiator culture entirely. Now it was less bloody, used to preserve Legion's strength and pick talent. But gladiatorial arenas were still places people went for sport and spectacle. Could she have gone there? Kasha, she left after you finished her chi energy enhancement last night, the maid answered. She came back, went to her room, and then disappeared. This morning her attendant couldn't find Ms. Uden. If not for the timing of her enhancement, Kasha said, she might not have even noticed. The woman had no real duties on Nuceria. She drifted through her days. Kasha only saw her when she was brought in for the enhancements. Send more people, seal off the arenas, and sweep the big cities, Mr. Axis ordered. An hour ago I already sent teams. They found nothing, Kasha sighed. Mr. Axis closed his eyes for a moment. Then he sat cross-legged and relaxed his mind, letting his chi energy spread. Years of cultivation had strengthened him. During his first mission, he could sense across half a planet. Now he could scan Nuceria for life. He marked every being he perceived, space marines, nobles, commoners, gladiators. But there was no trace of Ms. Uden. She'd vanished as if into thin air. This was bad. He wouldn't have been worried if it were anyone else, but this was Gilliman's adoptive mother, someone of extraordinary importance to the Primarch. If word of her disappearance leaked on his territory, it would be catastrophic for Mr. Axis's standing with Ultramar. He needed time and control. Kasha, seal the news. Don't let anyone know Ms. Uden is missing, he said, standing. We'll search quietly. Kasha has another idea, she said. Maybe I can use a special psychic technique, prophecy, to find her. Prophecy, he echoed. It used to be a passive, crude thing, but Magnus's dealings with the Black Library changed a lot. The Eldar devised a structured prophetic ritual that can't foresee everything, but for tracking a living person, it should work. Magnus has taught me some of these refinements. Mr. Axis blinked. He had planned to call in the clown troupe for investigations, but if Kasha and Magnus had a searching ritual, he wanted to try it immediately. You need an object of hers and a quiet room, she said. They went to Ms. Uden's chambers. The room was over the top in a way that made Mr. Axis blush, luxuriant fabrics, flamboyant purple everywhere, racks of very intimate garments, and yes, erotic toys. Mr. Axis even found several items that felt decidedly inappropriate for the dignified matron everyone assumed her to be. Kasha, he coughed. She's been single for centuries, and your chi upgrades have restored her youth, Kasha said flatly. It's not surprising she has preferences. Don't stare. Mr. Axis cleared his throat and rummaged. High on the wall hung a massive painting of a gorgeous blonde in slinky nightwear, Miss Uden, youthful and radiant, strikingly self-admiring. Kasha picked up a silky nightgown she'd worn close to her body and closed her eyes. As they left the room, a small black 666 mark appeared on the spot where the nightgown had been. In the painting, Miss Uden's smile shifted to terror. The figure's face contorted, one hand clawing at the canvas as if trying to escape. A shadowy silhouette loomed behind her. In Mr. Axis's private training chamber, Kasha settled and began the ritual, using the nightgown as a conduit. Psychic light gathered around her, and then her face went ashen. Without warning, she spat a mouthful of blood and collapsed. Mr. Axis? The painting, quick, was all she managed before she blacked out. He was on her in an instant. His chi calmed the bleeding, and he carried her to the medbay, forcing down a tonic made from the fruit of the spirit tree. The elixir healed her flesh, but her spirit remained battered. Kasha's soul had been strengthened by decades of Mr. Axis's works. Whatever had struck her spiritually was no ordinary demon blow. He'd heard her last words clearly, the painting in Miss Yuden's room. He ordered matter from the intellect library to watch over Kasha and rushed back to the chamber. The painting had changed. The gilded portrait no longer showed a composed beauty. The painted woman had collapsed, one hand clawing the frame as if trying to pull herself free. Her face was torn with terror. Behind her, a seductive, leering man reached and gripped her ankle, dragging purple tentacles that wormed out of the canvas. The painted Ms. Yuden was wide-eyed, mouth open in a scream. Mr. Axis didn't hesitate. Golden-green chi braided across his skin, and his hair bristled as he pushed himself into a furious state of power. He exploded into an elevated form, his aura spiking to levels he rarely showed, and he struck the painting with everything he had. The canvas shattered like glass. Warp energy, sour and oppressive, spilled from the torn frame. He seized Ms. Yudun's arm and began to pull her toward the real world. Half of her form slid free, but her skirt and other parts were braided with purple, corrosive tentacles. One pale, smiling hand, formed of smoke and syrupy light, had her other ankle in a vice. "So you found me, Mr. Axis," the figure said, voice silk over blade. "Shut up, you damned hermaphrodite." Mr. Axis snarled and fired a concentrated chi blast. The blast detonated in the mirror realm, scattering light and sound, but the figure only laughed. It reformed, smoky and obscene. From the painting's torn edge spilled a parchment, blood-glued, signed in Ms. Yuden's hand, and stamped with a crimson hexagram. The name on it blazed like a brand. "That's impossible," Mr. Axis growled. He ramped his power higher, raining successive bolts of chi at the apparition. The floor suddenly wept a viscous purple liquid. Dozens of pale, clawed arms burst from the cracks in the shred canvas, clawing at his suit, at his limbs. Voices, sweet and mocking, spoke from everywhere. "What an affectionate rescue," the voice cooed. "But this lady already signed a contract with me." The name on the parchment made Mr. Axis's blood run cold. The signature stood under the bloody hexagram like a claim. He pulled harder. The painting's hands clenched her skirt. The figure inside held her ankle stubbornly. Slanish's avatar laughed with unholy delight. "We haven't met in ages. You're on such a tight leash, Axis. Don't you want to stay and chat?" "I don't make deals with perverts," Mr. Axis said, voice like a blade. "Then we'll play until the end of the world," the daemon purred. "Your fury pleases me. Stay a while. Pain and pleasure, they are brothers." Mr. Axis's patience snapped. He forged a long sword of golden chi and lunged, but a shimmering pinkish-purple barrier stopped the blade. Slanish's laughter swelled, sweet and rancid. Miss Yudun's skin began to show signs of corruption, strange purple sigils crawling across her flesh, the color bleeding into her veins. Her voice was ragged. "Mr. Axis, save me." He couldn't keep this tug of war. He roared and forced another surge of power through his body, his aura swelling until it lit the room. The pressure of his chi doubled as he drove himself harder, an even more intense form of focus and strength than before. The clash of forces cracked the walls and frayed the thin boundary between their reality and the warp. "Bring her out now," he bellowed. Slanish's voice slithered, delighted. "Why so hasty? We were about to have so much fun. Or perhaps you want to come in and join us, Axis. After all, you have such potential." "Back to your warp." Mr. Axis roared and hurled everything at the painting, light, force, will, trying to wrench Ms. Yudun free before the corruption could finish claiming her. Chapter 206. Entering the Warp. Super Saiyan 3 versus Slaanesh Axis's roar detonated through the room, sending violent shockwaves that shook the entire base. The Super Saiyan form, bolstered by the power of Super Saiyan 2, was staggeringly strong. By all logic, the room should have collapsed when Axis activated his legendary Super Saiyan, but a strange, terrifying warp energy flowed around them, as if pulling the chamber into another dimension. "Don't force me to go in there and hit you. I'm warning you. Let go now." Axis's eyes were milky white, his dark green hair standing on end despite the lack of wind. If he hadn't feared getting lost in the warp, he would have charged in on the spot. "Look at you. You radiate an aura more corrupt than mine, like a born destroyer. Join us. You love slaughter. You love ruin, don't you? I can taste your hunger for destruction. Come, step in. Don't you want to destroy me?" Slaanesh coaxed, beckoning with a slender finger. Then a massive green fist slammed into Axis's face. At this size, Axis towered at roughly 3.5 meters at Primarch scale. One swing of his hand could reach Slaanesh easily. He grabbed the Chaos God by the hair and ripped him close, then raised his boot and stomped ferociously on Slaanesh's head, crushing the skull beneath his weight. "You're taking advantage of me, aren't you? Did you think I wouldn't dare to hit you?" Axis snarled. As he crushed Slaanesh, he forcefully pulled Mizyudan away from the painting. But just as she left the canvas, "The contract is sealed, my dear." "Ha!" Slaanesh's voice echoed like a persistent haunt. It had been deliberate. Everything had been bait. He only wanted to enrage Axis. Mizyudan's body convulsed. A purplish-black rift opened on her back, and an eerie eye peeled open, whispering the corrupt thoughts of a malignant god. The strange violet eye looked painted on her skin. "Fuck you." Axis snapped. His rage snapped the last thread of restraint. He had been plotted against time and again. Even a puppet has its limits, let alone a legendary Super Saiyan. At his boiling point, Axis launched himself into the painting. To hell with the warp gods, to hell with the risk of getting lost. He would buy his way back later. Right now, he wanted to kill Slaanesh. Still, a shred of sense remained. Axis left a globe of chi energy to brace the frame so the makeshift portal wouldn't wink out immediately. A terrifying golden-green aura roared into the warp as the legendary Super Saiyan materialized there in a physical form for the first time. "Slaanesh, I'm in! Now I'm going to play!" Axis bellowed and swung his fist at Slaanesh's head. His blow carved a stellar trail through the warp. The golden-green aura ripped a vacuum through Slaanesh's viscous domain, driving the warp power back with raw ki. Under Axis's vibrations, a gellar field-like bubble swelled within the warp, stabilizing their fighting ground. Slaanesh's androgynous face had barely reassembled when Axis's punch caved his skull in. Purple, pus-thick blood sprayed from 7 orifices. Before it hit the warp, it coalesced into screaming succubi that were pulverized into particles by the shockwave. Bizarre as it was, Axis didn't care. Endless demons surged at him. "Now that's more like it. This is the real you." Slaanesh's shattered jaw slithered back into place. His body swelled to mountain size, 6 spider-like legs erupting from his spine, each tipped with statues of writhing, copulating mortals. Pinkish-purple miasma formed billions of barbed tongues and coiled toward Axis. The demon horde slammed into Axis's aura and was shredded, but as the fight unfolded, the warp seemed to fold outward and reveal an endless tide of horrors. Axis roared, and the golden-green force around him became a meat-grinder vortex, pulverizing demons by the scores. He had fully unleashed the legendary Super Saiyan. Axis leapt across cracking spatial fissures and drove both fists into Slaanesh's crown. In a supernova flash, Slaanesh's form exploded like fragile glass. The shockwave destroyed nearby floating pleasure temples and obliterated the oncoming demons. "Ha ha ha, your realm is hell! I'll show you true hell! I am the real demon!" Axis thundered. "Is that all, Axis? Is that your roar, you incompetent ape, or are you just a wild monkey?" Slaanesh's mocking voice dripped from everywhere, laughing with increasing relish. Countless Slaanesh avatars crawled from the warp's folds, some draped in the Emperor's white robes, some a corrupted Miss Yudun, some a female Emperor, some Kasha, and other faces Axis recognized. "The angrier you get, the sweeter you taste," Slaanesh purred. Before he finished, 20 clones were pierced by blasts of chi. Axis's pupils had been swallowed by white light. The Super Saiyan battle instinct ensured every strike hit warp energy nodes precisely. He smashed the clones to pieces. Anger did not mean recklessness. If anything, the legendary Super Saiyan fought with colder precision. When the golden lightning of Super Saiyan 2 began to crackle over him, the warp convulsed. Axis's fist, braided with chain lightning, tore through 3 clones, and the aftershock rent a crack thousands of kilometers long through the warp. A peaking Khorne realm took the brunt. The brass citadel collapsed under the shock, and the blood god's roar echoed from the rift. Axis and Slaanesh's clash was causing collateral damage. "He is my purple monster, my prey." Khorne's voice rumbled somewhere beyond the ruptured seam. Even the blood god, furious, could do little inside Slaanesh's domain. "Ignore that fool. Show me more," Slaanesh urged, though cracks now marred his seductive face. The shattered clones did not reform. Instead, they were utterly annihilated by some savage, destructive energy. Slaanesh reassembled his main body at a distance and spread his arms as if to embrace the incoming blow. Let me see your limit. Axis's fist tore the clone apart again. Greater demons watching trembled in unison. Axis ripped Slaanesh's spine free with his bare hands and lashed it like a whip. Each swing hurled turbulent, destructive energy. When Slaanesh tried to corrode him with pleasure toxins, Axis's Super Saiyan cells burned them as fuel, intensifying his golden-green aura. Ah! Roar! Axis unleashed himself completely. The golden aura swelled, his hair lengthened, his eyebrows vanished, his features hardened into a merciless mask. He ascended into Super Saiyan 3, the crackling lightning of Super Saiyan 2 still entwined around him, his most devastating form. Incredible power. In the real universe, none could stand against you, but the warp is different, my dear, Slaanesh said, trying to sound unruffled. Shut your mouth. Axis answered, and his fighting style itself changed into something terrifying. Super Saiyan 3 abandoned technique for pure primal savagery, biting, punching, ramming, headbutting. He met Slaanesh's claws with his chest and smashed them with his knee. When it came down to raw strength, the god was at a disadvantage. Each time Slaanesh's perfect body was dismantled anew, Axis tore out a tongue, swung the mutilated corpse, and smashed it against his knee. A sickening snap sounded. The god of pleasure's divinity strained and groaned. In the warp, Axis was more chaotic than chaos, more demonic than any demon. His muscles ballooned like an ancient titan's, his golden-green Super Saiyan 3 hair whipped around, and his lips curled into a bestial sneer. You called me a wild monkey? Come see what this wild monkey can do. His voice had ceased to be mere language. It was a primordial roar that shook Slaanesh's domain. Then, Axis vanished. No, he didn't disappear so much as outrun the warp's laws, moving at a speed that ignored every constraint and driving straight through Slaanesh's heart. Bang! Chapter 2-7, Invincible Golden Gorilla, a Real Monster. Chapter 7, Invincible Golden Gorilla, a Real Monster. Slaanesh's body detonated like a supernova, exploding into countless fragments of flesh and blood that screamed as they melted away. Axis did not stop. He kept hammering, fury driving every blow. You like to play? I'll play until you can't anymore. Boom, boom. Slaanesh's form kept falling apart and snapping back together, but each reconstitution grew slower and more strained. Axis's fists were more than physical strikes. His ki furiously ate away at the Chaos God's essence. The corrosive nature of his Super Saiyan power made the usual regenerative tricks futile. For the first time, Slaanesh's voice shook. Ah, wonderful pain, he laughed, but the laugh had a tremor. Axis ignored the madness, seized Slaanesh's head and twisted. Crack! The Chaos God's neck snapped. Axis held the head in his hand, but in the next instant, it dissolved into a writhing mass of venomous snakes that coiled around his arm, trying to bite and corrupt him. Boring tricks, Axis roared. A golden-green aura flared, vaporizing the snakes. His power suppressed the warp's influence. Amplified to the extreme of a Super Saiyan, it acted like an antibody against corruption. He looked up into the warp. Slaanesh's true form was reassembling, but it was no longer the seductive hermaphrodite. It had become a twisted torrent of desire, a writhing mass of faces that howled, laughed, mated, and fought all at once. Slaanesh's voice came from every direction. You've made me serious, my dear. Now let us truly become one. For a moment, Slaanesh attempted to seize Axis's body, to colonize that nearly invulnerable physical form. The warp convulsed, tentacles, claws, and maws reaching out from the void to drag Axis into an abyss of perpetual corruption. Axis's chi formed a hard barrier, stopping the Chaos God's influence. Even his soul fought back. An angelic halo flared golden, warding him. The Chaos God's essence could not invade. The plan to possess Axis and claim one of the strongest physical bodies failed. You want my body? Come and try, Axis sneered. The torrent of faces lost its mockery. Billions of eyes turned to Axis with an unprecedented gravity. You are no ordinary human. I see the potential for godhood in you. Slaanesh's tone carried the first hint of respect. Just then, a broken voice murmured, Axis, Axis. But Axis had only one aim, to crush the gender-fluid pervert before him. He ignored it and unleashed more power. Burning with Super Saiyan fury amplified toward Super Saiyan 3's limits, his fists shone like stars as each blow strained Slaanesh's domain. The warp itself groaned. Boom! Axis's punch struck the torrent of desire. His golden-green energy eroded the Chaos God's essence like a virus. The twisted faces melted in screams. Slaanesh's domain began to collapse. Pleasure palaces turned to ash, and demons were shredded in the energy storm. Axis laughed and clapped his hands together as he began to charge a devastating attack. Final, flash, wave! A golden-green beam burst forth, slicing through the warp. Everything in its path was annihilated. Slaanesh's domain blew open in a massive hole. Even the Chaos God's essence staggered. Axis gasped as the strain of sustaining Super Saiyan 3 with added amplification made his muscles tremble. He couldn't hold this forever. Still, his eyes were animal fierce as he watched the domain crumble, but something deeper was stirring. You truly made me serious. From the void there surged a deeper purple light. Slaanesh's true form at last manifested, not a taunting deity, but a pure conceptual entity embodying ultimate desire, pleasure and corruption, love and beauty, art and madness, pain and torment. The pressure was immense, the same oppressive force Axis had felt facing the Emperor at full power when the Dark King's trace had been used. Now, let us end this farce. Slaanesh's voice was cold and majestic. Axis grinned. Just what I wanted. Let me show you something good. A bright halo formed in his palm and expanded until Axis flung it outward. After decades of time travel and study, he had developed theoretical techniques. One of them was the creation of an artificial moon. Slaanesh looked puzzled. So you just lit a lamp? He asked. You called me a wild monkey? Axis shot back. Fine, I'll show you a wild monkey. His artificial moon loomed. Terrible heartbeats began to pound through the warp. Thump, thump, thump. Axis's heart drummed like a giant war drum. Roar. The roar tore at the warp's fabric. Axis's body swelled, two fangs jutting from his mouth as his face contorted into the savage visage of a great ape. Muscles bulged, bones cracked, and golden-green fur erupted across him, each hair braided with crackling energy. His jaw thrust forward, stark white fangs slicing his lips. Slaanesh's conceptual entity showed surprise for the first time. Axis towered over 30 meters tall. A massive tail lashed like a pillar toward the sky. Where the transformation finished, a star-spanning beast of golden-green fur stood amid the chaos. The golden great ape's pupils burned red as a furious aura surged. Legendary Super Saiyan golden-green great ape, an abomination that overturned Slaanesh's understanding of the material universe. Every strand of fur radiated destructive chi. Its exhalations could vaporize demon legions. Terrifyingly, the beast retained a clear will. The feral savagery of the legendary Super Saiyan fused with the primal fury of a great ape, tempered by Axis's intelligence. The Emperor's modifications had been thorough. Axis's enhanced brain and core allowed him to control the great ape transformation, like Saiyan royalty. He had not, however, found the catalyst to ascend to Super Saiyan 4. That actual SS4 power still eluded him. But the golden great ape's might was more than enough. Now, the golden great ape's roar cracked across the Slaanesh domain. Let's see who the real monster is. For the first time, Slaanesh's instincts screamed danger. He poured all his energy into a spear of desire spanning the void, the tip studded with billions of fallen memories. The golden great ape moved faster. A single swipe of its paw tore the warp open in 5 rifts that spanned light years. Slaanesh's spear was shattered before it could form. With the other claw, the ape seized the Chaos God's conceptual body like a child grabbing a glowing purple jellyfish. Let go of me. Slaanesh's voice broke. The golden great ape slammed him down against its knee. Crack! The sound of Slaanesh's essence fracturing drew the other Chaos God's attention, but the great ape already opened its gargantuan maw. Golden green energy condensed in its throat into a ball of light like a newborn supernova. Rumble, rumble, then a cataclysmic blast. The great ape's roar became a tangible shockwave that shredded the warp for tens of thousands of kilometers. Slaanesh's realm split like fragile glass. Twisted pleasure palaces and decadent gardens collapsed under the fury. The great ape kept moving. Its massive foot rose and crashed down. Rumble. The ground of Slaanesh's domain buckled and caved in. Countless Slaanesh demons were crushed to pulp. Their screams were snuffed and their remains vaporized by chaotic energy. The great ape's palm swept through the ranks, bisecting demon legions and sending gore flying. From the distance, Slaanesh's reassembled form watched in shock as the golden beast tore his domain apart. He had truly provoked a monster. Chapter 208. Khorne appears unexpectedly, and the golden giant ape is defeated. The battle had reached a white-hot pitch. Every breath of the golden great ape stirred the very essence of the warp, and a golden-green key storm swept across Slaanesh's domain. The purple world was dyed gold, tinged with streaks of sickly green, as the berserk ape wildly swung its fists and beat its chest. "Roar!" Axis bellowed. A beam of golden light shot from his mouth, a golden-green ray extending tens of thousands of meters and scouring away almost all the surrounding purple. Countless Slaanesh demons were obliterated. Even the Pleasure Palace itself, though it had no physical form, being a conceptual domain like Nurgle's garden, was struck by the assault. The Chaos God's displeasure echoed through the warp. "You dare destroy my domain," Slaanesh hissed. "Roar! What are you going to do about it?" Axis snarled. Transformed into a golden great ape, he pressed his assault. In that form, the stamina he had expended surged back into his body, filling him with raw strength. Green energy orbs burst from his golden fur. In every sense, he had become a living force of destruction. Ha! The green-furred great ape smashed and tore through Slaanesh's realm until the purple space became a swirling gold and green storm. Slaanesh's conceptual form split into 1,000 purple streams of light, each revealing warped humanoid figures and grotesque monsters. Some of the most twisted souls he had ever collected now formed into weapons and fired at the ape. This was a warp attack, alien and disorienting compared to material universe power, and at first it unsettled Axis. The wails of tormented souls gnawed at him until Scion evolution took over. The fur on the great ape's chest bristled, and a natural green key shield blossomed across him. In that form, Axis had somehow manifested the Super Saiyan's shield. The soul impacts shattered on contact or were blasted into dust by the counter-recoil. Axis's Scion cells were evolving mid-battle. Slaanesh manifested as a giant six-armed purple monstrosity, its body composed of pure, corrupt warp energy, and engaged Axis in brutal close combat. Its blows carried the purest corruption of the warp, capable of warping physical laws. The golden great ape met it head-on, slamming into the creature with fists and chest-beating ferocity. Their clash sent rivulets of purple and gold energy exploding outward. Axis's punch twisted Slaanesh's head and deformed it, but the Chaos God's other four arms lashed back, claws rending into the great ape's chest. Axis's shield cracked, golden fur torn, blood flowed. The wound only fed Axis's bloodlust. "Not enough! Again! Roar!" he roared. Muscles bulging, the great ape latched onto two of Slaanesh's arms and ripped them free with a sickening tear. Slaanesh shrieked, raw chaos energy spurting from the stumps, but he regenerated swiftly, sprouting four new arms even more grotesque and lethal than before. Gradually, however, Axis's combat talent began to shine. As the fight continued, his cells evolved further: strength, speed, reaction, while Slaanesh's regeneration noticeably lagged. Axis's body surged with new vigor. He leaped and slammed down like a meteor, forcing Slaanesh's legs into the warp ground and ripping a tidal wave of purple energy outward. For a time, it seemed Axis might break Slaanesh. His punches carried berserk Super Saiyan ki that eroded the Chaos God's essence, but the warp gods were not so easily felled. Slaanesh reasserted his domain with a terrifying purple force that drowned out the golden-green storm. The shimmering tempest vanished, leaving Axis alone and exposed. "So you think tearing apart my domain costs me anything?" Slaanesh mocked. "Let me show you why we're called Chaos Gods. We are the truest powers in this universe." The Pleasure Palace rebuilt itself instantly, and the demons Axis had slaughtered regenerated under Slaanesh's will, surging back into being. Slaanesh declared the battle his, then reached into his domain and brought forth a crimson giant, a 100-meter-tall monster wielding a gargantuan axe. The fight had already stoked another god's appetite, Khorne, the blood god on the brass throne, who delighted in slaughter. Slaanesh smiled thinly. "What a tedious fellow," Slaanesh said. "Very well, I'll give you this one, but don't forget our arrangement." The giant life form flickered and vanished, leaving the confrontation to Khorne. "I won't forget," a voice rumbled. "This one's mine." A crimson colossus burst from the warp and charged. Its presence reshaped the domain. The purple bled away, replaced by a blood-red battlefield. Slaughter, the stench of iron and sulfur, and the crackle of battle intent filled the air. The ground became scorched earth of bone and lava. Axis, 30 meters tall as a golden great ape, suddenly felt that oppressive murderous will, raw, unfiltered. Compared to Khorne's avatar, he looked small, but Scions do not know retreat. Covered in Slaaneish's scratches and bleeding, Axis still charged. Khorne's axe struck first, an arc of godly force that could cleave planets. The golden great ape crossed his arms to block. Golden green ki met blood-red energy in a blast that echoed across the warp. Axis was thrown thousands of meters and suffered a deep, gaping wound on his left arm. He forced his life force to heal it. Here, Chaos gods were immortal, but he was not. "Ha ha! Is that all?" Khorne taunted, the blade resting on his shoulder. The avatar was a war god's fury made flesh, strong enough to slay ordinary star gods. That Axis could stand against it drew a grin from the giant. Axis launched himself back into the fray. Khorne's steps cracked the ground as his axe swept in a horizontal death blow. The ape leapt, condensing a massive golden-green energy sphere in his claws and hurled it at Khorne's helm. The blast engulfed the blood god, but he shrugged it off. "Too weak," Khorne roared, the axe cleaving through the explosion and biting into the great ape's chest. Blood gushed. A hideous wound opened. Still, Axis gripped the axe with bloodied claws and smashed Khorne's faceplate with his other fist. Khorne laughed, exultant. "Yes! Fight! Bleed! Kill!" he bellowed. His axe struck again and again, each strike braided with blood-red warp power. The great ape met the blows head-on, clutching the blade between his palms while his golden fur soaked with blood. And then he went berserk. Axis unleashed a flurry of claw strikes, each blow capable of shattering continents. Khorne answered blow for blow. Their conflict made the warp tremble. Demons were pulverized by aftershocks. Flesh and energy flew in a savage symphony of violence, pure, unadorned war. But the onslaught wore Axis down. Panting, knelt on the scorched, blood-soaked earth, the great ape's chest still gaped where Khorne's axe had cleaved him. His legendary Saiyan regeneration slowed under the warp's erosive influence. Khorne's avatar towered above, armor repairing itself instantly, crimson eyes burning with unquenchable battle fire. "Is that all?" Khorne taunted. "Your blood, your rage, your will to fight, oh, they please me." Axis looked up, Khorne's mountain-like figure reflected in his golden pupils. If this continued, I'll lose, he thought. In the warp, a Chaos God's power can be virtually endless. His own stamina would run out. He needed more, stronger power right now to surpass his former self. The Saiyan's most primal great ape might, fused with his ultimate Super Saiyan power, an absolute return to an ancient perfected form. Roar! The golden great ape howled to the sky. The golden key contracted, then snapped. An unprecedented energy storm bloomed, and a red power flared through it. Axis's great ape body began to change. The golden fur receded, and dark red, blooded fur coated his torso. His body shrank, muscles condensing into denser, more refined power. His hair shifted from gold to black. Crimson stripes appeared around his eyes. Bones cracked and reformed as his ape face smoothed back toward human features. His eyes grew cold and focused. He gently clenched a fist, and a fierce smile touched his lips. Super Saiyan 4. Ha! I have to thank you, Khorne, for the power of Super Saiyan 4. You're the first to see it. Axis's voice had shed the thunderous roar of a great ape and become a low, savage growl. Crimson fur covered his body. His long black hair flared like a lion's mane, and his tail wrapped around his waist. He radiated a raw, violent aura. This power was nothing like the golden great ape, on an entirely different level. Axis felt it surge through him beyond anything he'd imagined. Unlike Super Saiyan 2 or 3, which tore at the body and couldn't be sustained, Super Saiyan 4 felt primal and natural, closer to the Saiyan's original state. Ha! Interesting! This is truly interesting! Khorne laughed and charged, his blood-red great axe coming down in a furious arc. Axis raised a single hand and caught the blade without effort, pinching the enormous axe between two fingers. The weapon could not advance an inch. What? Khorne's face twisted in disbelief. The one he had just dominated had leapt to this level in an instant. Don't be surprised. Saiyan power is unreasonable like that. Battle is the best catalyst. One fierce fight can give me more growth than 10 years of training, Axis said with a faint smile. With a gentle squeeze, the mighty axe shattered in his grip. Axis grinned and drove his other fist into Khorne's abdomen. Boom! The punch punched clean through Khorne's demonic form, caving his back in. Armor cracked and blood spat forth like molten iron, shock mixed with a growing terrible excitement in Khorne's eyes. Your power, how did it spike like this? You can change forms, and every transformation doubles your combat strength, Khorne managed. Even as he spoke, the wound along his back began to knit itself. Axis didn't answer. He vanished and reappeared behind Khorne, delivering a whip-like kick that struck like an axe. Bang! Khorne's back collapsed, and he crashed into the blood-soaked ground like a meteor, a shockwave ripping across the battlefield. These warp-born immortals were maddeningly resilient. The vitality of the Chaos Gods rivaled even Majin Buu's. It's not over yet. Take this. Axis seized Khorne's avatar and launched into the sky, raining down merciless blows. The Blood God's avatar could barely respond. Every strike connected like a fist on flesh, and Axis drank the exhilaration up. Come be my chosen champion, Axis. I can give you everything. If you'll accept, I can make you a new Chaos God, my fifth. Khorne offered between roars. A Chaos God's promises? Axis answered with another iron fist. Believing such a proposal was absurd. Stop your nonsense. All I want is to beat you down. He crossed his arms, crimson energy coalescing around him. His tail rose, crimson lightning crackled. The warp itself trembled under the fluctuations of Super Saiyan 4. Tenfold Kamehameha. Boom, a devastating torrent of energy erupted. Khorne's avatar screamed as the beam obliterated him utterly. No trace, no residue remained. Axis had won. His power now completely eclipsed the golden great ape. That form would never be necessary again. Having mastered Super Saiyan 4, he commanded the great ape's strength while retaining full control. The blood-red energies that had once surrounded him vanished. Axis drifted in the emptiness of the warp, his Super Saiyan 4 aura burning like a living flame. He clenched his fists, feeling raw power rise within. No, this wasn't his limit, not the Saiyan limit. Beast-like pupils flared with hungry fighting spirit. But how to leave? The warp gateway he'd entered through seemed gone. How long had he been in the warp? He thought he'd heard someone calling during his fight with Slaanesh. Axis extended his ki sensing and searched for the ball of chi energy he'd left behind, the same ball he'd used earlier to shore up the warp gate. Far away in the warp's depths, four wills turned their attention in unison. Slaanesh's delight, Tzeentch's plotting, Nurgle's rot, and Khorne's war. Khorne's true form rose from the brass throne, his massive blood-red axe slamming onto the floor. Interesting. So interesting. Khorne's voice thundered through the warp. Axis, brat, you're remembered. We will meet again. You are an opponent I acknowledge. It amused him beyond measure. The avatar he'd forged, powerful though it was and limited to the warp, had been bested by this upstart. If such an avatar walked the real universe, it would be unstoppable, yet it remained isolated here. His attention moved to another theater, Horus, lost in slaughter. To gain power to stand against the Emperor, Horus had campaigned for 10,000 years, if not more, within the warp, honing himself in endless slaughter for an eternity that felt like a lifetime. It's not enough, Khorne muttered. You must be stronger, Horus. We have a gift prepared. On a chaotic battlefield, Horus led demons against demons, given infinite time and inexhaustible forces by the warp. His once refined bearing had twisted into ruthless Warmaster glory, black armor gleaming with chaotic luster. So your plan worked. Axis doesn't even know how long he's been trapped here, Horus said when Khorne appeared before him. Time has no meaning in the warp. You could wage war here 10,000 years, and someone else only an hour. You probably don't remember how long you fought, a bird-headed blue figure said with a sly laugh. Tzeentch nodded as he spoke. I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? My current strength is no match for Axis. Tell me the method you promised to increase my power, Horus said, his voice like iron. The good news would be the strength boost. The bad news he would deal with later. The good news is that the fight between Axis, Slaanesh, and I yielded a huge reservoir of chi energy, Khorne said. We collected it, mixed that chi with our warp divine power, and you can strengthen your physical form. Horus was the focus of their plan. The chi axis released in his struggle with Khorne and Slaanesh had reached astonishing levels, enough that, combined with the blessings of the warp gods, it could raise Horus's power unimaginably. And the bad news? Horus asked. What bad news? Tzeentch replied, a smirk twisting his beak. I think it's all good, but first, little Horus, You must consume the special broth Nurgle has brewed for you. Then try to absorb the chi. With our divine blessings, you will gain the strength to contend with Axis, and even the Emperor. A rotund green figure shuffled forward, carrying a bubbling cauldron. Nurgle's grin was broad. Drink up. I've added a few special ingredients. It will do wonders for you, greatly enhance your physical form. Horus scowled. Nurgle's broth sounded like a joke, and who besides Nurgle's own followers would willingly taste it? Still, he had sunk this low already. What worse could come? Horus drew a breath, took the cup Nurgle offered, and drained the thick green broth in a single gulp. Let's see how far you can evolve, the four gods intoned, watching as Horus began to absorb the gathered power. Horus's body convulsed as he absorbed the life-warm broth Nurgle had prepared. He dropped to his knees and tore out hoarse screams of agony. The pain was absolute, a terrifying cleansing that swept through his flesh. Little Horus, Nurgle said, watching with rapt delight, this was brewed for you. It contains life force beyond imagining. I am the living pulse of this universe. That boy Axis has given me quite a surprise. Slaanesh leaned in, impatient. Nurgle, are you sure? Don't tell me we're going to pamper him to death. Impossible, Nurgle replied. My brew is peerless. If he can absorb what's in it, his body will be remade, perfected. It will be strong enough to hold that chi energy. He smiled indulgently. To Nurgle, all flesh was life to be cherished and amplified. Every cell in Horus's body was being emboldened by the broth's influence. Horus's screams sharpened, the veins on his skin bulging as a strange green force began to braid through him. The War Master's eyes flickered with a green light, uncanny and terrible. He'll take it. He's the one we chose, Tzeentch said. Sometime later, the screams cut off. Horus rose, changed. He now stood 4.5 meters tall. Muscle bulged beneath his black armor until the whole image seemed bestial. He spat, wiped his mouth, and let out a breath. I made it, he said. The sensation was like having eaten a spirit tree fruit, only more extreme. This was the baptism of true universal life force. He had been reborn. Not finished, Slaanesh warned. The real test is next. Accept the chi energy. This is Axis's power, harvested and focused for you. We pushed him to the pinnacle of mortal strength. Khorne and Slaanesh exchanged a look. A blue-white sphere of light manifested in each of their palms. Horus squared his shoulders. I'm ready. This time I will have the power to end them. He thought of his mother and the throne-bound tyrant. He thought of the emperor he meant to slay. The gods nodded and poured Axis's chi and their own divine might into Horus. The War Master completed his transformation, chosen of the four. When he opened his eyes again, a terrible presence radiated from him, an aura that read like a sub-god in the warp. Perhaps more. Khorne's approval was a grunt. Horus felt stronger than the clone he had faced before. The chi had been worth the effort. Your enhancement is complete, Tzeentch said. You now possess the greatest power in the material realm. In the final clash with the Emperor, we will help you. Together we will suppress him in the warp. Go kill that hypocrite, Nurgle added with a leering grin. Afterward, I shall invite you and your mother to be guests in my garden. Or to my pleasure palace, Slaanesh purred. There you may indulge as you please. Horus's face hardened. One thing, Axis. He won't appear in this war, will he? He felt confident now to deal with the Gene Seed Primarchs, and with the gods at his back, he imagined the Emperor finally beatable. Slaanesh waved a hand. Do not worry. We cast him into nothingness. No time, no life. He cannot leave. He does not feel time pass. Tzeentch moved to explain further. The four of us have blocked the Emperor's influence. He has sought to rescue Axis, but our power prevents him from acting. Horus grinned. Cruel. Good. Next we set the trap. I will let Magnus notice me. He will surely tell Father. Then we will suffocate the warp, stir a storm so great the Emperor can't communicate by normal means. His only choice will be brute psychic force, Khorne said, and with what he has now, you know how that ends. Tzeentch laughed. We will make them slaughter each other. Magnus must be eliminated, otherwise the trap fails. Who will carry it out? Tzeentch asked. At first I thought of the Wolf King, Horus said, but Lionel Johnson, let the Dark Angels lead it. They obey without question, and they do not listen to excuses. They will carry out the killing. They laughed and began to plot. Far away in the warp, Axis strained against an abyss that felt like a prison. He shifted into his Super Saiyan 4 state. and gathered every scrap of chi he possessed, roaring into the void. Trapped in that nothingness and cut off from the energy he'd left behind, he had to force a way out by raw power. Majin Buu and Gotenks had once opened a passage from the hyperbolic time chamber to reality by similar means. The warp's barrier was stronger, but Axis was mightier than those two. His chi surged, and the void around him quivered with spatial strain. Then a voice threaded into his mind, faint, then clearer. "Axis! Axis! Can you hear me?" Axis released his spirit and took the psychic signal without hesitation. "I'm here. Magnus? It's me. Thank the stars I found you." Magnus's voice carried relief and exhaustion. He had hunted this place for years, scanned the warp with the whole Thousand Suns Legion, and finally fixed Axis's location. "I was trapped by the Chaos Gods," Axis said. "I can't get out. Can you help?" "I can," Magnus answered. "I've narrowed your position. I'll open a psychic channel. If you concentrate with me, we can tear a passage." Axis accepted. "I will push everything I have." "Hold to my guidance," Magnus said. He had prepared rituals and threads of spellcraft for years, all for this rescue. Axis drew in a deep breath, his aura exploding like a starburst. Golden chi arced through the void, carving a streak of light. He clasped his hands and poured all his power toward the point Magnus indicated. "Now!" Magnus's voice rang. Across real space, the Thousand Suns chanted, ancient incantations building a vast psychic net that took the warp's skin in its teeth. The power they drew was fierce. Many of their own collapsed under the strain. The place Axis occupied was not just any part of the warp, but a cage built by the Four, meticulously wrought and viciously strong. Axis launched himself, his Super Saiyan 4 wave hammering the barrier like a flood. The void twisted, hairline fractures spidering outward. Magnus's golden threads wove along those fractures and tore them wider. Axis glimpsed Magnus and the bleeding bodies of the Thousand Suns on the other side. "Come through." Magnus's voice was already thinning. The passage would not last. Axis snapped into gold and rushed through, pulled by the psychic pull. On the throne side, where Horus and the gods still caroused, the laughter cut off into alarm. "No, he's being pulled out!" Tzeentch shrieked, the human bird's face a mask of fury. They had counted on everything, but had not expected Magnus to find Axis, nor Axis's power to break the warp. The plan had just hit the first true complication. Chapter 211, Accidents. 100 years have passed, my son. "What? How did he get out?" Slaanesh hissed. "Ha, as expected of the man I favor. I knew that so-called land of nothingness couldn't hold him," Khorne boomed, laughing as if Axis's escape had been predicted all along. "How did he escape? The four of us poured divine power into that place. Even a normal Imperial vessel couldn't have used its warp drive to leave. He's only a mortal. No matter how much power he wields, he's still a mortal," Nurgle rumbled. "His own power ripped open a warp rift. And someone helped him," Tzeentch said, his expression suddenly very dark. Axis was a key variable. His combat prowess wasn't far behind the Emperor's. He could sometimes unleash force greater than a typical Emperor, and alone he could blunt the guaranteed kill the Four Gods had arranged for the Emperor. Even a Horus strengthened as much as he had been would not stand against Axis. The chi energy boost to combat ability was simply overwhelming. The Four had managed to obtain large amounts of chi, but they could only use it to bulk up Horus's body. They could not place chi within him or otherwise endow him with it. The state of being directly infused with the god's divine power was reserved for the Emperor. In the end, their plan depended on forcing the Emperor onto the Golden Throne in that battle while sacrificing Horus without a proper burial. That had been the ultimate design. "Didn't you say he could never leave that land of nothingness? Didn't all four of you reinforce it with divine power?" Horus demanded, face grim. He remembered facing Axis on Holy Terra. He and Rogal Dorn had been utterly beaten. The duel between Axis and Khorne's avatar had terrified him. Red fur across the torso, wild black hair, an oppressive presence that left Khorne's avatar outclassed. Horus had wanted to avoid fighting Axis. He preferred to confront the Emperor. The ideal solution was to keep Axis locked away in the land of nothingness forever. But nothing ever goes entirely to plan. He had just finished putting the Great Heresy into motion, and this anomalous man had broken out. "Don't make a fuss. Everything is part of my plan," Tzeentch said, turning his head with a thin, cold laugh. Everything was under his control. This deviation was just one of countless possible branches, nothing fatal. Then I'd like to hear it. How do you plan to deal with Axis? Horus sneered. Axis was already out of the warp. He couldn't be easily tricked again, and the warp could no longer hold him. Tzeentch began to outline possibilities, various schemes and contingencies, and the plotting continued. In the real universe, a scarlet rift tore open above Prospero. Axis fell like a meteor, crashing through the wizard's tower and leaving a massive crater. When he climbed out, he saw Magnus's unmistakable crimson armor. Several thousand suns stood ready around him, though 2/3 of them had already collapsed. Magnus, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns, was down on one knee, barely breathing. His psychic power was nearly spent. The sorcerers who had fallen were drained as well. To break the warp barrier, they had paid a staggering cost. If Magnus had not had the numbers of his legion, there might have been non-combat fatalities, some psychers directly drained to nothing. Under the tower, mortal psychers had been supporting the effort. Magnus had invested enormous effort into the teleportation array. Axis, you're back, Magnus said, breathless. Axis stepped forward quickly and hauled him to his feet. Thank you, Magnus. Thank you for saving me. If Magnus hadn't intervened, Axis didn't know what he would have done. He didn't even know if Kasha's condition had improved while he was gone. He had to get back to Nuceria as fast as possible. Ha ha ha. Among friends there's no need for such formalities. Magnus forced a smile, although his mind was already turning to how to explain what had happened. Magnus, I have to return to my home planet immediately. I was tricked by those chaos gods into entering the warp. If you hadn't pulled me out in time, the consequences would have been terrible, Axis said. Axis, the situation is a bit different than you think. You need to be prepared, Magnus said. What do you mean? Did something happen while I was gone? Axis frowned. Yes, there were indeed problems. Axis, do you remember how long you've been gone? How long? Probably less than a day. I don't know the exact time, but I only fought 2 battles, so it couldn't have been long, Axis replied. No, Axis, you need to understand the warp. Time doesn't work the same there. If an Imperial ship gets lost in the warp, when it emerges, ages may have passed. You've been in there far longer than you realize, Magnus said. Axis froze. Please don't tell me it's been years. Not years, Magnus sighed. Axis let out a small, relieved breath at that. Axis, you've been lost for 98 years, just 2 years short of a century, Magnus said. The words hit Axis like a physical blow. Magnus had spent nearly a century searching and preparing to bring him back. Axis's eyes widened. Disbelief painted his features. When he had gone missing, humanity was in the early 30th millennium, the 900s. That meant it was almost the 31st millennium now. Maybe it already was. Don't joke. 98 years? Nearly a century. Axis stared at Magnus. Calm down. For a gene seed Primarch, this kind of stretch of time is little more than a breath. You were actually lucky. There are Imperial records of ships lost in the warp for 1,000 years, Magnus said, patting Axis on the shoulder. For most mortals, disappearing for a century would mean the whole world changed beyond recognition, but for a Primarch it was different. I can't calm down, Magnus. Tell me, what happened after I left Nuceria? What about Kasha? She was badly hurt when I left, Axis said, anxiety flaring. Kasha had prophesied about the Chaos Gods and had been grievously wounded. Axis had plunged into the warp, partly out of rage over her fate. The matter of Guilliman's adoptive mother had been only a catalyst. Sister Kasha's soul suffered severe damage. Fortunately, your chi strengthened her soul enough to keep her alive, but she fell into a deep sleep. Father personally went there and took her back to Holy Terra to recuperate. According to him, she'll awaken after a century. Counting the time, Kasha should wake in 2 years, Magnus said. That's a relief, Axis breathed. The fact that Kasha would survive and wake in a couple years eased him greatly. And what else? What about Guilliman's adoptive mother? Axis asked. He had pulled her out and had seen a mark of chaos on her back. He worried what had happened after. Miss Uden is fine. You saved her, Magnus said. Axis frowned. I mean afterward. Was she okay? Of course. After you vanished, Father came to your world. With you and Kasha absent, Miss Uden helped manage the planet. The Emperor met her and expressed his gratitude. She remained on Nuceria for 7 years before leaving. She did a lot for the planet. Magnus explained. Axis fell silent. For 7 years, while he and Kasha were gone, Miss Uden had taken charge and even had an audience with the Emperor. If she hadn't been tainted at all, Axis would be at ease, but he still remembered that strange Slanesh mark on her back. "What about my legion?" Axis asked. "Your legion is doing very well. It's developing strongly. That fellow you promoted, Khorne, has inherited your will and is leading your legion. His combat power is terrifying," Magnus said. The warrior with the great axe, using the golden transformation, often made Magnus think of Axis himself. His power approached that of a Primarch. Combined with Axis's son, the year's gains in the Great Crusade had been impressive. Axis's gene seed progeny were among the most promising. "You don't know, Magnus. When I rescued her, I found a strange chaos mark on Ms. Uden's back. I thought she might be beyond saving, so I plunged into the warp," Axis said. "Don't worry, the chaos mark has been removed. Remember Mater? He's on your planet. You greatly strengthened him with mental tree juice. His psychic power is second only to Kasha, far beyond a typical Legion librarian. After you disappeared, he alerted me psychically, and together we removed the mark from Ms. Uden. Later, Father examined her personally and confirmed she was fine. You seem quite concerned about her. Your relationship with that lady is unusual," Magnus said with a teasing glint. "She's Guilliman's adoptive mother. If anything happened on my world, I'd be responsible. But there's nothing else between us," Axis said quickly. "Oh, then what about your son?" Magnus asked casually. "My son?" Axis's face went blank. "What did you say?" "Your son with Ms. Uden. Don't pretend in front of me. The rumor reached everywhere, and the child is grown now," Magnus said. No, that's impossible. You must be joking. I never." Axis sputtered, shaking his head. The idea was absurd. He hadn't had a relationship with Ms. Uden. "I'm not joking. When Father visited, Miss Uden's belly was large. The Emperor even stayed on your planet a few extra months to wait for the boy's birth before leaving," Magnus said. "If anyone would know, the Emperor would." "This is impossible, Magnus. I never even." Axis's voice trailed off. He protested with genuine indignation. He had never. So how could she be carrying his child? Chapter 212, Butterfly Wings, 3 Imperial War Masters. Upon hearing this, Magnus's face shifted. Axis wouldn't lie, which meant he truly had no relationship with Ms. Uden. So how did this woman become pregnant? "Axis, this complicates things," Magnus said. "The child resembles you strongly. He has a tail like yours and can trigger that golden-haired transformation, though he lacks key energy. He even has a tail, and he can go Super Saiyan. Could he be one of my gene seed offspring?" Axis asked. In theory, he had over 200,000 sons. Every member of the Golden Legion was one of his gene seed children. "Impossible. He was born naturally. No signs of genetic tampering. I've seen him, and his psychic potential is extraordinary," Magnus replied, shaking his head. If the boy had been a gene seed offspring, Magnus would have noticed. This child was a natural human. Strange. Could he be a clone or an in vitro child? Axis mused. If someone on his planet had obtained samples, hair or skin flakes, and used them for cloning or IVF, the resulting child could carry his genes. The Emperor himself had run experiments like that in the past, but clones that weren't born naturally could not survive without key energy. "It probably isn't a clone, but I don't rule out in vitro," Magnus said. So Miss Uden was odd. Had she somehow acquired Axis's genetic material and used it to impregnate herself? If so, the child's status would be unusual, perhaps enough for Axis to be ambivalent toward him. "I think that's the likeliest explanation. You should know, Axis, some things happened before." Axis recounted Slanesh's blessing on him and Ms. Uden's obsessive devotion. "Then it's almost certain the child is in vitro. What do you plan to do about him?" Magnus asked. "I don't know yet. If he truly is my son, I'll keep him in my legion. I have responsibilities. But I have no fondness for Ms. Uden," Axis said. As for corruption by chaos, he wasn't overly worried. Any power capable of deceiving the Emperor would rival the Chaos Gods themselves. "How about I tell Father? Let him know what's going on with the child, and tell him you're back. He'll be glad," Magnus said. In the first years after Axis's disappearance, the Emperor had personally searched for him before passing the task on. Now that Axis had returned, Magnus wanted to inform the Emperor immediately. "By the way, who raised my child? Where is he now?" Axis asked. For the first 7 years, he was raised by his mother on your world. Later, Leman Russ did propose taking custody, but the boy's psychic talent was so strong that at age 10, father ordered him sent to my world to study psychic arts with me, Magnus explained. If not for that, the boy's terrifying psychic potential and the Emperor's direct command, he would likely have been taken by Leman Russ. Even while the boy studied on Prospero, Leman Russ visited him several times. Is he still here? Axis asked, surprised. He hadn't expected Magnus to have raised his son, nor that the Emperor had personally assigned him to Magnus. There had to be a reason. No, if you'd returned a few decades earlier, you could have met him. He studied with me for 10 years. Once he came of age, he returned to your legion to lead your gene seed offspring alongside Khorne, fighting across the galaxy. Although your legion's Primarch is absent, your son's battlefield prowess may not equal yours, but among the gene seed Primarchs, he's not far behind, Magnus said. His voice carried a complicated affection. The boy had been on Prospero from age 10, and Magnus had taught him for a decade. I understand. What year is it now? Axis asked. He had been gone 98 years. A terrible schism ought to be approaching. It is the 2nd year of the 31st millennium. Come, let's inform father. I want to tell him you're back. Leman Russ, Lionel Johnson, Sanguinius. They'll all be glad to know, Magnus said with a smile. Axis nodded and followed Magnus back to the Sorcerer's Tower. The 1,000 sons who had just rescued him were waking and being sent to the medbay for recovery. Much has happened while you were gone, Axis. The Great Crusade succeeded beyond measure. The Imperium now stretches to the galaxy's edge. Humanity is stronger than ever. Restoring the Golden Age seems within reach, Magnus said. Are the intellect library units present in all legions now? Axis asked. Before the heresy, there had been the Council of Nicaea, where the Emperor gathered the Primarchs to debate the use of psychers in the legions. The council resulted in the disbandment of the intellect library units. Not long after came the Ulanor Crusade. Horus was made War Master, and the Emperor returned to Terra. Ha! The intellect library units were preserved. Now every legion has its intellect library, Magnus replied. Axis nodded. At least that victory had been preserved. Tell me the major events of these years, Magnus, Axis said. No problem. The only Primarchs who opposed the intellect library were Mortarion, Rogel Dorn, and Corax. Corax returned to the Imperium after your disappearance. He's the Raven Guard Primarch, exceptional at infiltration and personally powerful, but he hates psychers. 2 Primarchs returned after that. The last was Alfarius, who came back around 70 years ago. 50 years ago, a major incident occurred. Lorgar's perfect city was destroyed by your gene seed offspring. It was on the Emperor's orders. Lorgar had grown too fanatical and was hampering the crusade, so father sent your son to punish him, Magnus said. Axis frowned. This didn't fit what he knew. Hadn't the Ultramarines destroyed the perfect city? How had it become the Golden Legion's deed? And his son had accompanied the Emperor? The Emperor seemed to take a peculiar interest in his child. What was the hidden cause? So what position does my son hold now? Is he a first captain? Axis asked. He had wanted to build rapport with Lorgar. Before he could act, they'd already been set against one another. Ha ha ha, I knew you'd ask. He is the Vice Lord Commander of your Legion and the War Master of the Imperium's left flank. War Master of the left flank? There are multiple War Masters in the Imperium? Axis was incredulous. There was more than one War Master? Yes, 3 in total. Grand War Master Horus is the supreme among them. He can command the other 2. Your son is War Master of the left flank. Rogel Dorn holds the right flank. Dorn's main duty is to guard the Sol system, and he answers directly to the Emperor. If we're talking War Masters, my son shouldn't even be on the list. I thought Lionel Johnson would be more suitable, Axis said. L. Johnson had always had a difficult fate. Now 3 War Master positions had been created, and still no place for him. Why would you think your son unqualified? He's excellent, a top strategist with extraordinary guile, and he has a close relationship with the Ultramarines. He's exceedingly capable at internal administration. He likely inherited that side from his mother, Magnus said. How did my son come to be War Master of the left flank? About 10 years ago, Magnus replied. A powerful orc war boss raised havoc on Ulanor. The Emperor led the expedition to suppress him, and your son accompanied father. None of the other Primarchs were present. The battle was deadly. That war boss was immensely strong and even felled the Emperor. In the end, your son saved father and defeated the war boss. His prestige from that day made him War Master of the left flank. Axis's expression went strange. The Ulanor Crusade had been supposed to be the Emperor's personal stage for Horus. How had his son become the protagonist? Chapter 213, Emperor. He is your and Kaisa's child. Things were getting stranger by the minute. Axis truly could not fathom what the human Emperor was thinking. To most in the Imperium, the Ulanor Crusade had been a battle that decided the fate of the Imperium of Man, but in truth, it had not. The Orc warboss on Ulanor was not even as powerful as the beast that came later. The idea that the human Emperor had been seriously wounded or nearly killed was absurd. Who was Huang Lao Han? The Dark King's alternate persona, a top-tier powerhouse in the current universe, a terrifying being capable of soloing cosmic star gods. The war that really determined the Imperium's fate had been the Zidane campaign, the battle that finally forced Huang Lao Han to use fragments of the Void Dragon. By timeline, the Third Zidane War should already have ended, or had Magnus's butterfly effect changed things? Don't be ridiculous, Magnus. You and I both know the Emperor's power. If my son had Kai, then maybe. But without Kai, there's no way he could face an opponent the Emperor couldn't handle, Axis said. Without Ki, even a combat rating of millions or tens of millions doesn't produce the destructive potency of someone with tens of thousands of Kai points. But it happened. As for how strong father truly is, he probably has his reasons. Even though your son doesn't have Ki, his psychic power is no less than Kasha's. He also consumed the spirit tree fruit you left behind and inherited the ancient warship you found, the Morning Star. The Morning Star is now your son's flagship, Magnus replied. Father had likely held back. No matter how strong the Orc warboss had been, he wasn't a match for the Emperor, unless the two Orc gods had intervened. That didn't mean Axis's son was weak. If they truly fought, apart from me and Sanguinius, both of us having consumed more than 2 spirit tree fruits, no one else could match that kid. All right. What other earth-shattering things has my son done? Tell me everything, Axis said. He was stunned. The Morning Star had recognized the boy. Oh, there's a lot. He annihilated an alien race, conquered planets. His military achievements are too numerous to count. Though he isn't a gene seed Primarch, his status in the Imperium is no less than one. Sometimes I think father is a little too kind to him. Even Horus is a bit jealous of your son, Magnus said. Historically, Horus had been the Emperor's favorite, but since Axis's son appeared, the Emperor's attention and affection had shifted. Horus, whether he showed it or not, harbored ill will toward Axis's son. I still don't know his name. To suddenly have such a son is a real surprise, Axis admitted. Scions didn't typically fuss over family sentiment, but Axis had once been an Earthling transmigrator. He felt differently. He currently goes by Son of Axis. He swore he would only accept a name from you when you returned. Guilliman's adoptive mother did give him a name, but the Emperor did not recognize it, Magnus said. So the child's name hadn't been officially decided. His father would name him when he returned. Axis frowned at the thought. What if he couldn't come back? Even calling himself Son of Axis felt awkward. They walked and talked until they reached Magnus's meditation chamber. After a few words, Magnus sat cross-legged and entered a trance, sending his soul into the warp, the human Emperor. Axis activated his own psychic power and joined the link. Father, look who I brought back. I completed the task you gave me. I rescued Axis from the warp, Magnus said excitedly. Is it really you, Axis? This is wonderful. You returned to the Imperium. The human Emperor, far away on Holy Terra, sounded genuinely elated. He had not expected Axis to return after 98 years. Axis had been personally targeted by a warp demon. The Emperor had assumed Axis might be lost for centuries, perhaps forever. Long time no see, father-in-law. I didn't expect it to be delayed so long. In my perception, less than a day passed, Axis answered. It's good you're back. Your legion will once again be led by you, but I plan to transfer 100,000 men from it to form a new Space Marines legion to be led by your son, the Emperor said. The boy had already been appointed Left War Master. He needed real troops under his command. That's fine. I just found out I have a son, and I have some questions, Axis said. Ha ha ha! I know your questions. Don't worry, Miss Yudun is not tainted by chaos. I personally confirmed that. As for your son, actually, like Guillemon, he is also Ms. Yudin's adopted son, the Emperor answered. Wait, are you saying he isn't Ms. Yudin's and my biological son? Axis asked, stunned. Magnus beside him was equally surprised. He had never known this. It's complicated. He is your and Kasha's son, my grandson, the Emperor said. What? He's my and Kasha's son? That can't be right. Wasn't Kasha in a coma? Axis exclaimed. This was known to only a few people in the Imperium. I actually told him the truth when I appointed him War Master 10 years ago, the Emperor began, recounting events from 98 years prior. Kasha had been about 2 months pregnant while on Nuceria. Slanesh's scheming had left one of you missing and the other in a coma. The situation was urgent. Matter discovered Kasha's pregnancy and reported it to the Emperor. Kasha's body, severely wounded, could not safely carry the child. Miscarriage seemed likely. After Mater and Magnus cleared the chaos marks from Ms. Yudun, she, feeling guilty, offered to help. A transplantation and surrogacy were performed, transferring the embryo into her womb. At the time, no other woman on Nuceria had the physical fitness to carry the child. Miss Yudun had been strengthened by Axis's ki for years and had consumed a large amount of spirit tree fruit. She was the strongest candidate. After much deliberation, the Emperor decided Miss Yudun should carry the child temporarily. She successfully gave birth after a year's gestation. Everything after that largely matched what Magnus had said. Axis nodded as the pieces fell into place. No wonder the Morning Star had recognized him. He was Axis and Kasha's child, carried and raised by Ms. Yudun. That also explained the Emperor's deep concern. In a sense, this boy was the Emperor's blood, his grandson. He was very likely the most powerful of Huang Laohan's descendants. Axis, I will arrange for you to meet him. You, as his father, will personally give him his name. Originally, his mother would have named him when she awoke 2 years later, the Emperor said. If Axis had not returned, Kasha would have named their son. Now, with Axis home, a section of his legion would be split to form the new legion under the boy's command. I understand, father-in-law, Axis replied. Axis, you... The Emperor's voice faltered, and the psychic link with Axis and Magnus was abruptly severed. A furious storm erupted across the warp, cutting off all psychic communication. That's strange. Why would such a violent storm suddenly flare up in the warp? Magnus said, baffled. Magnus was very confused. Why was this happening? A warp storm of this magnitude did not just appear by chance. Axis, it looks like we'll have to wait a long time to reach Father. As long as this storm rages, we can't communicate with the outside, Magnus said with a helpless sigh. He remembered the last time a storm this large had struck. It had been when Axis had only just left Prospero. That storm had lasted for months and covered almost a quarter of the galaxy. This one felt even worse. He could not send a single astropathic message. The last time something similar happened was 1,000 years ago. A catastrophic warp upheaval tied to the birth of a new chaos god that had effectively cut off whole human worlds. Humanity's technology regressed by millennia until the Emperor stepped forward and led mankind back up again. Axis frowned. The storm had erupted the moment he returned to real space. If only it had come a little later, he could have contacted his legion. A storm like this was an omen of the Great Heresy. It would sever the Imperium's ability to receive information and to undertake long warp voyages. If that was already happening, had Horus betrayed the Emperor? Magnus, tell me, Axis said quietly, what's been happening with Horus lately? Horus, Magnus blinked. He's been leading the Great Crusade. Ever since the Father withdrew from the Crusade, Horus has commanded the Gene Seed Primarchs. He was puzzled why Axis asked. He and Horus had only met twice. Has he been wounded recently? Stabbed, say, by a dagger? While I was in the warp, I had a weird impression that Nurgle was scheming against Horus. Magnus's face darkened. Horus's fall had begun with that cursed blade. After it wounded him, he was taken to a so-called temple by Erebus and Abaddon and corrupted by the ruinous powers. That dagger, crafted with the intent to fell a Primarch, had been the opening note of everything. Lorgar's betrayal was already certain to Axis. The moment the perfect city fell, Lorgar had turned. Devon had been a trap, planetary governor corrupted, the appearance of the dagger, everything a concerted plot by the Chaos Gods. The dagger itself was Nurgle's work, a toxin designed to cripple a gene Primarch. "This is serious," Magnus said. "You should have told me sooner. No one's reported an assassination attempt on Horus recently. But this storm is not natural. If you're right, then a plot against Horus is unfolding." Before Axis could reply, the astropathic link died. Warp travel and communication were both cut off. "Can you search the warp for Horus? Warn him," Axis urged. By Magnus's memory, Horus had been on Devon to put down a rebellion in the 4th year of the 31st millennium, roughly the present. "All right." Magnus nodded, sat cross-legged, and projected his mind into the warp. His soul energy was stronger than in the old timeline. Even so, the storm screamed around him. By force of will and power born of being a warp demigod, he pressed on. Axis and Magnus shut themselves in a secret chamber for a month. Except for food, they rarely left. For 3 months, they tried everything they could think of and found no success. The storm showed no sign of weakening. If anything, it grew worse. Dozens of Imperial merchant ships put in at Prospero seeking refuge, thrown out of the warp by the Tempest. Many were torn apart attempting to shelter. "This is bad, Axis. If other human worlds are like this, we're finished," Magnus said, panic rising. If this storm endured for centuries, as the ancient catastrophe had, the consequences would be unthinkable. The Imperium the Emperor had built could unravel. Axis's sigh was grim. This was no random storm. It bore the mark of the Chaos Four. The ruinous powers had enough strength to cut humankind off entirely. In the original timeline, even during the Horus Heresy, the Chaos Gods had not unleashed their full might against the Emperor. They wanted to weaken him, not wipe out humanity. Humans were useful to them. Sacrifices, playthings, a source of endless amusement. Each Chaos God had human cults to command. The massacre at the Ivant 5 landing site had been one such deliberate act. Horus had opened a channel of warp communication so Rogel Dorn could send forces into a prepared slaughter zone. 3 Space Marine legions had been annihilated there. With the god's blessing, Horus's troops could traverse the warp. The rest of the Imperium could not. Axis was 90% convinced Horus had betrayed, but he did not yet know which Primarchs had turned. "Magnus," Axis asked, "have we fought the Raiden again in recent years? Did any Primarchs fall because of them?" "What a strange question," Magnus said. "Ever since you defeated the Raiden, they've stayed to the fringes. No full invasion. As for the Primarchs, all of our brothers are present. All 20 Gene Seed Primarchs are accounted for." The Third Raiden War had not occurred, as in the old timeline. Perhaps the Raiden feared Axis's power. That only made things stranger. How about the Second and the 11th Primarchs? In the original history, they were erased by the Emperor. Now, because of Axis's interference, neither had been erased. The Second had been saved by Axis, and the 11th had survived because no Raiden War had wiped him out. Axis had met the Second once, and little since. He had never met the 11th. If Horus launched the heresy, where would those two stand? Angron had already betrayed in the original timeline. If others followed, there was no telling what loyalties would hold. "Axis, you're getting stranger," Magnus said. "Did you see something in the warp? Tell me the truth." Axis lowered his voice. "At Holy Terra, during the period when the Emperor and I were there, we discovered a terrible thing by psychic vision. More than half of the Gene Seed Primarchs would betray the Emperor." "What, Axis? What do you mean? Half of us would betray Father? That can't be." Magnus nearly lost his composure. All the Primarchs were made by the Emperor. They revered him. They even worshipped him as a god. Worship. Magnus's mind immediately went to one likely betrayer, Lorgar. Lorgar had already turned in Axis's estimation. He had long held a grudge against Magnus's people. His perfect city had been destroyed by Magnus's gene sons. Despite Lorgar's outward devotion to the Crusade in recent decades, people did not easily change their nature. "There may be many traitors," Axis said quietly. "That's why I wanted you to search the warp. But the Chaos Gods are focused on us right now. They are trying to keep us out." Axis's tone made his limits plain. No matter how absurdly strong he was, like a Super Saiyan 4, Magnus thought wryly, Axis did not have a ship and could not traverse the galaxy with his body alone. "Magnus," Axis continued, "we must warn Father. Even if warp comms are blocked, you can gather your gene sons, and with your power and mine, we could send a psychic call to Holy Terra. We might pierce the storm. Magnus's eyes lit up at the plan. Warp communication might be blocked, but raw psychic force could still transmit information if enough power was combined. Absolutely not. Axis interrupted, cutting him off. Do not make a massive psychic call. The Emperor may already know the storm's role in the heresy. You have no idea what condition Holy Terra is in. Magnus, never strike Holy Terra with a raw psychic blast. Magnus stared. Why? Axis told him everything. When he and the Emperor had argued on Holy Terra, the Emperor had shown him the Golden Throne and the Webway project he had created. The Emperor had used a special device to open a fragile Webway link to the Old One's network. That link required the Emperor's psychic maintenance. A massive psychic impact aimed at Terra could shatter the Webway, and if it broke, Holy Terra would open to the warp. Demons would pour in without end. You mean the Webway would explode open? Magnus whispered. The thought made him sick. He understood the destructive power their combined psychic blast would wield. It could rip the Emperor's fragile work apart and tear a permanent gateway above Terra. Thank you for telling me, Magnus said, fear on his face. I almost would have done it. I have another plan, Axis said. We can try to reach the Old One's Webway and ask the Harlequins for aid. I have authority to pass through parts of the Webway. We can use the Eldar's routes. Axis had access to the Webway, an asset nobody would have expected the Chaos Touch to wield. He could trace a path from the Webway gate near Prospero and ride it toward Terra. Across space, on some planet far away, Horus had gathered his library of intellects and a host of Chaos warlocks from the rebel legions. He strode before them, a thunder in his voice. All of you listen, Horus roared. This time we will launch a psychic strike at Holy Terra and destroy the Emperor's Webway. Chapter 2:15. The Webway is destroyed, and the Emperor sits on the Golden Throne. To ensure the plan's total success, Horus had mobilized every Space Marine librarian who had already sworn to him and openly turned against the Emperor. He had also gathered a vast number of Chaos sorcerers, warlocks steeped in Tzeentch's arts, some of whom had been elevated into daemon princes centuries before. The first step of the Great Heresy was to trap the Emperor on Holy Terra. If the Emperor could not be confined, the rebellion would be meaningless. So long as he could appear on the field, it was only a matter of time before their revolt was crushed. The crucial objective was to prevent the Emperor from intervening. Horus had once planned to reveal himself to Magnus, force Magnus into sending a psychic alert to the Emperor, and then use that signal as a trigger to unleash a cataclysmic warp storm that would sever all warp links and let the Chaos Gods batter the Emperor's Webway. That scheme had been foiled when Magnus discovered Axis and brought Axis to Prospero. But Horus, as War Master, never entered battle unprepared. If Magnus could not destroy the Imperial Webway, he would do it himself. Horus, everything is ready. We await your command, said Fulgrim, radiant in purple and gold, his features cruelly beautiful. Are you confident, War Master? Asked Mortarion, clad in dark green and bearing a great power scythe, his voice like wrought in ocean. I am absolutely confident. Our allies in Chaos will see it done, Horus replied, certain and bright-eyed. Then let us begin. I have longed to kill that hypocrite. The man is a tyrant, said the Primarch of the 11th Legion, voice full of hunger. We will execute that tyrant and free our mother. She tried to oppose him before and failed. She was right. We are the weapons he uses. Our brothers have been deceived. Today, my followers, we fire the first shot against the Emperor. Strike him hard. Horus roared, by my command, by the command of the new Lord of Mankind, let the assault begin. Thousands of Legion librarians chanted as one, their voices weaving intricate psychic rites, while tens of thousands of Chaos warlocks cast alongside them. A terrible psychic pressure condensed around Horus. Twisted warp energies glinted in his crimson pupils. Foul black light leaked from the seams of his armor as the librarian's resonance coalesced. The Chaos warlocks convulsed as their souls were bled to feed the spell. At the climax of the incantation, Horus raised his hands and directed the gathered tide of warp energy toward Holy Terra. Now, let the false Emperor taste our wrath. Across time and space, the monstrous psychic surge struck the depths of the Imperial Palace. The Webway barrier, carefully carved and sustained by the Emperor's work with the Golden Throne, began to shatter like glass. The Emperor, who had been calibrating the psychic matrix at the webway's entrance, looked up as the dome's clouds bled a sickly purple red. The Imperial Palace trembled violently. Spiderweb cracks crawled across the webway's outer wall. The psychic seals the Emperor had laid down dissolved as if acid had eaten them away. Worse, as the webway split, countless daemons poured through the rent. The Chaos Gods had hidden endless hosts within the warp region that lay around Holy Terra. Within seconds, the webway the Emperor had spent so long building was being torn apart. With a cacophony of frenzied roars, daemonkind surged out of the warp and rushed the palace. "All custodes, heed me," the Emperor commanded. "Work with the Sisters of Silence and enter the webway. You must not allow them through to Holy Terra." "By your command, your majesty," Captain General Valdor answered, kneeling once before the throne. He turned and led thousands of custodes with a host of Sisters of Silence into the breach. The breach gaped like a festering wound, spitting corrupted warp energy as a twisted storm ran through the passage. Daemons surged in endless waves. Constantin Valdor raised his power halberd. The gold of his armor shone in the dim light. "For the Emperor, for Terra," thundered the custodes, thousands of them, their voices a single immovable vow. "Until death, we shall not yield." First came the legions of Khorne, blood-twisted behemoths led by bloodthirsters, brass axes swinging, roaring as they smashed into the custodes' formation. Valdor did not give an inch. His halberd flashed and struck the foremost daemon. It disintegrated into dust beneath the holy power. But the daemons kept coming. Next came the bloated hosts of Nurgle, Nurglings and rot bodies writhing, spewing pestilence meant to eat through even custodian armor. The Sisters of Silence stepped forward and deployed their null fields. Nurgle's contagion stuttered and faded. When Custodes and Sisters fought together, their strength was prodigious. The Custodes' shields locked into a golden wall no force could easily break. Khorne's spawn trampled over their dead to press on regardless, but the Custodes stood immovable. From the deeper darkness appeared the third wave, Tzeentch's pink horrors. Their broken shapes shimmered in and out of existence as psychic lightning cracked from their fingers, trying to sunder the Custodes' ranks. The Sisters' anti-psychic fields blunted most of the sorcery, but even so, some Custodes were swallowed by supernatural flame. Their armor vaporized and their flesh charred. They did not step back until the last second. "Hold," the leaders cried. They could not stop the flow of demons entirely, but they would buy the Emperor time. The battle in the webway was brutal and relentless. In hours that felt like an age, the Custodes could not count how many daemons they had cut down. The Golden Warriors could have fought for months, their endurance legendary, but the traitors' ability to spawn daemons was matched only by the will of the Chaos Gods. The Emperor's face was grave. This had all happened too suddenly. The Imperium of Man had been thriving, and then, without warning, a warp storm severed Terra's links to the stars, and a psychic hammer struck the webway. "Emperor," Micardo said as he came forward, alarm in his voice. "The warp rift keeps widening. We must find a way." If the warp rift continued to spread, it would corrode the Imperial Palace, and could, in time, drag Holy Terra itself into the warp and create a new Eye of Terror. "There is no other choice," the Emperor said. "I must sit upon the Golden Throne and use my psychic power to staunch the collapse." He rose and walked without hesitation to the pillar-strewn throne deep in the palace. The instant he seated himself on the Golden Throne, a pain like nothing before struck him, a double torment of soul and body. He gritted his teeth and bore it. Axis's earlier infusion had strengthened his flesh, and the strange fruit of the mental tree Axis had given him had bolstered his mind. Those gifts let him endure what he must. "Micardo," the Emperor said through clenched pain, "you must bring Magnus here at once. Only Magnus and I working together can hope to repair the webway. Hurry." "Understood, Emperor. I will send Leman Russ to Prospero to bring Magnus back. Should we take Custodes and Sisters of Silence with us for protection?" Micardo asked. Chaos had already struck. Any journey through the warp now was perilous. "Yes, take enough to ensure success," the Emperor replied. "Do not try to capture anyone, and take Axis with you." Micardo bowed and immediately ordered several hundred custodes, squads of Sisters of Silence, and detachments of the Space Wolves to make the warp jump for Prospero. Leman Russ would carry their strength and speed. Elsewhere, in Horus's command, a Chaos Warlock reported the movements on Holy Terra. "Warmaster, the forces have already departed Terra," he said, watching their every motion. A cruel, satisfied smile split Horus's face. Chapter 216, Horus's Evil Plot, Defaming the Axis Heresy. "Tell me their destination," Horus asked. "Reporting, Warmaster," replied the Chaos Warlock, watching the charts. "According to our calculations, their destination is Prospero." Under the protection of the Chaos Gods, the movements in the warp were watched like clockwork by the Chaos Warlocks. This fleet's heading was clear as day. "Warmaster, report. The Space Wolves have also deployed in force," another Warlock added, the one responsible for tracking the Primarch's worlds. "Their destination, like that fleet from Holy Terra, is Prospero." Everything was unfolding exactly as Horus had expected. His father truly intended to retrieve Magnus, and that gave Horus an opportunity to exploit the situation. He let out a dark laugh. "Excellent. Initiate a warp storm in this sector immediately. Sever psychic communication between Holy Terra and the rest of the Imperium." His plan could begin. When it came to strategy, he considered himself unrivaled in the Imperium. The Emperor's favored protege was no match for him in cunning. Even the Emperor was not his equal in this regard. Horus wanted a trap. If he could not destroy Axis outright, he would at least ruin him. He wanted Axis to suffer because, in Horus's eyes, that boy had stolen everything from him: his father's attention, his standing. The great heresy, however it was presented, was for Horus a chance to settle that score. "Now send a psychic communique to Lion L. Johnson." Horus's grin widened. "Tell him Magnus, in league with Axis, has initiated the great heresy. Say Axis has been in the warp for 98 years and been corrupted by chaos. The instant he was pulled back, he corrupted Magnus, and together they used psychic power to destroy the webway of Holy Terra. Order the Lion to go and purge them." Mortarion, standing nearby, sniffed. "This is clever, but the taint of chaos we'd use to make Magnus look guilty is too obvious. The Emperor might not be fooled. He knows Magnus's capabilities. Lionel Johnson, too, might quickly see through it if he encounters Leman Russ's forces." "Don't worry, Mortarion," Fulgrim said. "Horus is our warmaster. He's the greatest strategist and commander we have." Horus smiled at the praise. "Right, Leman Russ will side with Axis. There's no doubt about that. You may not know this, but Leman Russ and Axis have another bond. Before Axis became a Gene Seed Primarch, he was Leman Russ's adopted son." The room fell quiet. Very few in the Imperium knew Axis's true origins, but Horus did. He had seen Axis as a child. "Horus, what did you say? Axis is Leman Russ's adopted son. How is that possible? Isn't he a Gene Seed Primarch like us?" the 11th Primarch demanded. "Yes," Horus replied. "He is a Gene Seed Primarch now, but he was born naturally and later augmented by the Emperor. He isn't our brother in the same way. He was once Leman Russ's adopted son." Horus relished the thought of familial ties being twisted into a tragedy. The bond between Axis and Leman Russ would not break easily. Though impulsive, Russ was no fool. That was why Horus had chosen the Dark Angels to carry out this purge. Lionel Johnson would be no match for Axis in the face of such a personal conflict. Axis would resist. Even if he did not kill the Lion, the Dark Angels would be grievously wounded. The feud would be real, lasting. "This plan has one flaw," Fulgrim said. "Leman Russ will know at a glance whether Axis has been corrupted. If Russ and the Lion arrive together, the deception collapses." "No," Horus said. "Whoever told you the Space Wolves will reach Prospero? I never intended for them to. The warp storm will blow them off course to the Galactic Western Front. There's a powerful Xeno Empire waiting there." He glanced at the 11th Primarch, the one who had so often displeased the Emperor with his ideas of coexistence with Xenos. That Primarch had been swayed and had already joined the Great Heresy. "You mean you'll use a Xeno faction to tie down Leman Russ?" the 11th asked. "Exactly. I've negotiated with a Xeno power. They'll be tasked with holding Russ in place. If I seize the Imperium and become Lord of Mankind, I'll cede the Western sector to them." Mortarion's voice rose. "This isn't your usual ambition, Horus. Even if we've turned on the Emperor, are you really prepared to hand over Imperial territory?" "It's temporary," Horus answered. Once I control the Imperium, if they demand territory, I'll annihilate them. For now, they're a tool. It was, in truth, a mutual deception. This Xeno Empire would be expendable once Horus had consolidated power, possibly consumed in conflict with Leman Russ as well. This could be Zidon? Fulgrim mused aloud. Horus only smiled. Within the Dark Angels, there are already elements we can use, Horus continued. Luther, Lionel Johnson's supposed brother or adoptive father, can be turned. There are corrupted Dark Angels around him who whisper against the Lion. The Chaos Gods have seeded discord. They're all potential assets. After a month, Horus said, coldly methodical, we'll send word to the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes that left Holy Terra. Tell them Leman Russ is caught in a warp storm and cannot rendezvous. I have dispatched Lionel Johnson to support them. Tell them Axis has been corrupted and, together with Magnus, destroyed the webway. Instruct the Sisters of Silence, the Custodes, and Lionel Johnson to suppress the rebellion. For now, Horus's title as War Master was still intact. No one suspected his betrayal. He would use that trust while he could. What a sinister scheme, the 11th Primarch muttered. No wonder you want to send Leman Russ away. If Russ stayed, this poison wouldn't work. And there are veterans among our legions who are fiercely loyal to the Emperor, Mortarion added. Those have to be dealt with. I thought of that, Horus said. Calculate how many Holy Terra veterans are in each legion. There are 20,000 in mine, the 11th Primarch said. 30,000 in mine, Mortarion said. 30,000 in mine as well, Fulgrim said. My legion has 25,000, Horus said. Around 100,000 in total. We find a system and purge these loyalists, virus bombs from orbit. Nurgle had already supplied them with a cache of biological weapons. It suited Horus's purpose as well. Where? Someone asked. Istvan III, Horus said simply. We eliminate all loyalists from the legions there. Lionel Johnson stared at the message in his hands, disbelief warring with duty. Axis had been rescued, the communique said, but he'd been corrupted by chaos. He and Magnus had destroyed the webway of Holy Terra, leaving the Emperor near death. Horus ordered the Lion to march on Prospero and purge them both. Genefather, this is the Emperor's command. We must obey, a Dark Angels captain urged. Such work suited the Dark Angels. Hunting traitors and heretics was their métier. Genefather, something is wrong here, Lucifer said quietly, standing at Lionel Johnson's shoulder. You know Lord Axis. Lucifer's words hit Lionel Johnson like a cold blade. There was something very wrong with this order. Others might be ignorant of Axis's strength, but Lion was not. The duel between Axis and the Emperor in the webway had been kept secret, but Lion had seen the whole thing. And even setting that far-off clash aside, Axis's power had lately been shown to be far beyond that of ordinary space marines. Lucifer himself, a special gene seed offspring, had grown enormously after consuming the 2 spirit tree fruits Axis had sent him. Physically, he surpassed any space marine. How powerful could a gene seed offspring be? Lucifer was not on Axis's level, but he could casually destroy a planet. Lion respected him, but he knew he could not defeat him. More than a century and a half had passed. Lion's strength had increased, but beside the abnormal might of Axis, he was still far inferior. He even doubted he could force Axis into his first golden-haired form. Even if he and Lucifer fought together, they would not be a match for Axis, especially given Axis's ability to create other such gene seed warriors. How strong was Axis? No embellishment was needed. If Axis truly had betrayed the Emperor and humanity, his father would not have sent him alone. The Emperor would have personally led a force that included all the gene seed Primarchs. Only such a concentration could hope to fell Axis. Axis's chi energy was highly resistant to warp corruption. Lion could not believe he would turn traitor. Nor did he believe the Emperor would dispatch him to suppress a rebellion that would be tantamount to sending him to his death and dragging the entire Dark Angels Legion with him. Father, I agree with Lucifer. There's something very wrong here, an assault captain of the Dark Angels said. Some of the newer brothers might not know Axis's reputation, but the veterans did. When Axis had been a gene seed offspring of Leman Russ, the Wolf King, he had challenged 1,000 Dark Angels and made them falter without lifting a hand. His aura had been overwhelming. But father, this is an order from the Imperium, another captain protested. "This is an order from War Master Horus, not from Holy Terra," Lucifer replied coldly. He was Lion L. Johnson's gene-seed son, but he served his Primarch first and would protect his interests. And here lay the crux of the matter. If only we could restore psychic communication, we could confirm this with Holy Terra, the intellect library of the Dark Angels suggested. That comment twigged something in Lion. The warp storm had severed contact with Holy Terra for months. In that time, all operational orders had come from War Master Horus. Orders purporting to be from Holy Terra had been cut off, yet Horus's communications had been transmitted without issue. Worse, the warp storm raged, yet the routes Horus's fleets took always passed through calm, untroubled regions of the warp. That was far too convenient. Lion felt the chill of realization. Enough arguing. If it's the War Master's order, we'll make the journey to Prospero. But this is not a war party, Lion commanded. He would speak with Axis and learn why Magnus and Axis were being branded as traitors. "We'll need to rendezvous with the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes," one of his captains added. "Their destination is also Prospero. Prepare the ships. We depart for Prospero at once," Lion said. If the warp route to Prospero proved calm again, it would confirm his suspicions. Time moved forward. Horus issued other commands. Roboot Gilliman's Ultramarines were to operate in a more distant sector. Sanguinius's Blood Angels and the Golden Legion, led by Axis's son, were shifted to peripheral regions. Nuceria was left with a token garrison of 10,000. After sending those orders, Horus and the brothers allied to him set a course for Istvan III. The traitor Primarchs proclaimed that the government of Istvan III had betrayed the Imperium and embraced barbarous cults. They claimed they would go to quash the rebellion and would serve as airborne assault troops. Loyalist Space Marines believed them and boarded drop pods, never to return. The ground force consisted of over 100 large companies, more than 100,000 Space Marines. Against such an airborne strike, the planetary government had no chance to plead or resist. The battle was over within hours. A small band of loyalists, however, did not join the drop. Those who had followed the fleet with suspicion found something darker. Garrow, a loyalist Death Guard captain, and Taviz, a loyalist captain of the Emperor's Children, uncovered a monstrous plan. Their Primarchs were preparing a viral bombardment to cleanse the surface. The two captains realized the terrible truth. The War Master and many Primarchs had betrayed the Emperor. Faced with that knowledge, the Loyalists made the painful, right choice. Captain Garrow seized the frigate Eisenstein and, with Captain Taviz piloting a Thunderhawk, forced a way through the blockade to the surface to warn the populace. Then Garrow risked everything to break toward Terra. The Emperor had to know what had happened. Because of Taviz's warning, the Loyalists on Istvan III found shelter in bunkers, tunnels, and sealed refuges before the viral bombardment began. Horrific shells fell, and when the virus and fires subsided, the world itself had been changed. The air was a poisoned haze. Nearly 40,000 Loyalist Astartes perished in that first assault. Those who survived emerged furious. Their brothers had betrayed them and their emperor. They set about building defensive works on the surface to meet the coming attack, preparing for a battle they knew might be their last. They were lightly equipped and could be wiped out by the orbital fleets. Horus had no intention of mercy. He ordered the viral bombardment again. Terrifying green shells rained down mercilessly, and the Loyalists, still shouting, "For the Emperor," marched toward oblivion. In the original timeline, these Loyalists held out for 3 months, buying invaluable time for Captain Garrow of the Death Guard to deliver the tidings of the Horus heresy. Horus had not intended a prolonged ground war, but Angron's intervention forced a bloody land campaign. Here, Angron is absent. After crushing the Loyalists, Horus turned the fleet to pursue Garrow. Garrow had fled only hours before and had not yet reached the warp point of the system. He and his 100 Death Guard were despairing. "Captain, what do we do? There's no escape now," one of the Death Watch Astartes said. "We will serve the Imperium faithfully and fight these traitors to the death," Captain Garrow replied, though he too saw how bleak their prospects were. As the men despaired, a strange light kindled aboard their ship. An Eldar Harlequin in a gaudy costume walked calmly into their midst. "Sir, if you wish, you can leave with me through the webway," the Harlequin offered. Before he finished, dozens of bolters were trained on him. "Xenos, who let you aboard?" Captain Garrow barked. "There isn't time for explanations. Leave with me now, or Holy Terra will never receive this message," the Harlequin said. "We never consort with Xenos," a space marine growled. "Suit yourselves, I'll go without you. And you can wait here to be hunted down by the traitors," the Harlequin snorted. Garrow looked at the closing pursuers and then at his brothers. He ground his teeth. They had no choice. The message to Terra must get through. Reluctantly, he ordered his men to lower their weapons and follow the Harlequin into the webway. In a blink of impossible light, Garrow's small destroyer vanished. The pursuing traitor vessels, baffled, found only emptiness where their quarry had been. The Shadow Moon wolves who had led the chase returned sheepishly to the vengeful spirit. "What do you mean they vanished? They disappeared right under your noses?" Horus demanded, wrath terrible in his voice. Everything had gone so perfectly today. To allow an escape now could undo it all. If Holy Terra learned in advance, everything would be ruined. "This could be an opportunity," Fulgrim said. "We can spring a trap and annihilate the Imperium's forces in one stroke." "Forget it. Proceed as planned," Horus said with a sigh. Magnus must not be allowed to return to Terra. If he did, everything would collapse. On the Harlequin's course through the webway, after the danger had passed, Captain Garrow at last found his courage to question their savior. Why would a Xenos save them? The Harlequin only smiled and said, "You're confused. I was sent to bring you to someone waiting for you." "We're going to Holy Terra. That is our only destination," Garrow said. He had to deliver the warning. "You cannot reach Holy Terra now. The warp storm around it is too fierce. You must see someone more important," the Harlequin replied. The secret route to Terra was reserved for another, one that could not be exposed. "What dignitary?" Garrow asked, impatient. "Axis, the gene seed Primarch of the Golden Legion. I was entrusted by him to save you," the Harlequin said. "Lord Axis? Isn't he missing?" Chapter 218, The Strongest Primarch Axis. Prophecy revealed. He had heard the legends of the 12th Legion, the Golden Legion, and of their gene father, Primarch Axis. Axis was said to possess the greatest combat prowess of all the Primarchs, surpassing Lionel Johnson, Leman Russ, and the rest. He had fought alongside some Marines of the Golden Legion and seen firsthand the incredible power they wielded. The Space Marines of the Golden Legion could trigger a golden transformation. Their bodies would glow with golden light, their hair turn gold, and their strength would surge to 2, 3, or even 5 times their normal levels. Even when not transformed, many of the 12th's warriors were stronger than those of other legions. Their golden transformation was credited to their gene father, Axis, and many citizens of the Imperium believed it to be a blessing connected to the Emperor himself. After all, when the Emperor fought, his body was said to glow gold as well. So what must Axis' golden transformation be like as their Primarch? The answer seemed obvious. Rumors held that Axis had even clashed with Sanguinius, Horus, Rogel Dorn, and Lionel Johnson, and had emerged overwhelmingly dominant. For many, Axis was the first among the Primarchs in sheer combat power. But then, a century ago, Axis had mysteriously vanished. The Golden Legion kept faith that their gene father would return. Other legions were more skeptical. Lord Axis returned months ago. Magnus rescued him, and he already knows about the Horus heresy. "You should come to Prospero. Your little ship can't reach the Imperium from here," the Harlequin had told them. Months earlier, on Prospero, with Magnus's aid, Axis had finally contacted the Harlequins. He immediately tasked them to scour the webway for the latest galactic intelligence. They uncovered what Axis feared. Horus was initiating the Great Heresy. Magnus had been stunned when he first heard the news. Acting on this, Axis had sent the Harlequins to Istar Bay 3 to try to rescue any Loyalist forces still alive. "Angron has already been dealt with by me," Axis had said grimly. Without Angron's charge, the Loyalists would have no chance on the ground. Horus would crush them in space. Those who fled would have no time to retreat. Reluctant, but with no alternative, Garrow and his loyal Space Marines followed the Harlequins' lead to Prospero. In the strange corridors of the webway, killing a Harlequin could doom them to endless wandering. Better to keep them alive and preserve the warning. Magnus, too, remained the most powerful psyker in the Imperium after the Emperor. If anyone could notify the Emperor and prepare Terra, it was him. Travel through the webway was swift. In a matter of days, the small fleet with Garrow aboard emerged heading for Prospero. When they landed, Garrow led over 100 loyal Death Guard Marines and a dozen Emperor's Children survivors to kneel before Axis and Magnus. Two great gene fathers, Garrow intoned. I am glad, Lord Axis, that you have returned to the Imperium. No need for pleasantries, Axis replied. Tell me, has Horus already launched the Great Heresy? How many Primarchs have joined him? From the Harlequin's reports, the heresy had indeed begun. Yes, Lord Axis, Warmaster Horus has betrayed the Emperor, Garrow said. He has turned Fulgrim of the 3rd Legion, Mortarion of the 14th, and the Primarch of the 11th. On Istar Bay 3, they purged all loyalists in those legions. We are the only survivors. Axis listened, nodding. There should have been more survivors from the 2nd, but whether they escaped as they had in the original timeline, he didn't know. How is this possible? Magnus said, shocked. Horus, Father's favored son, he was the first to return, the one Father trusted most. And Fulgrim, why would he turn? His legion had glory, the title Emperor's Children, even the double-headed eagle on their heraldry. I can understand Mortarion, and perhaps the 11th. They've long resented the Emperor. But Horus and Fulgrim? We are shocked too, Lord Axis, Lord Magnus, Garrow said. Our Gene Father betrayed us. I'm more heartbroken than anyone. Lord Magnus, please, let Holy Terra know. Dispatch a great army to crush this rebellion. Now was no time for grief. The heresy had to be announced. Magnus's face darkened. If I could contact Terra, I would have done so already, he admitted. I cannot reach Holy Terra from here. To contact it may require the Harlequin's webway routes. Rest, Garrow, Axis said, clapping the loyalist's shoulder. Soon Holy Terra will know. I will see to Horus myself. He motioned for Magnus's aides to take the loyalists away to rest. Once they had gone, Magnus turned to Axis. Axis, what will you do? Shall we go to Holy Terra now? Magnus asked. Axis shook his head. Not yet. I want you to use your psychic sight. See if any special visitors will arrive on Prospero soon. In the original history, the first strike of the heresy had been the burning of Prospero. Horus needed to neutralize Magnus first, otherwise the Emperor could intervene. Magnus's actions in the original timeline had led to disaster. He had prophesied the destruction of the Imperium's fleet and, broken by his mistake, had not acted to prevent the tragedy. Axis wanted to be sure of the present danger. If they left now, and Terra's forces or an Imperial deployment came to Prospero to destroy Magnus, that would be catastrophic. Why ask me to make a prophecy? Magnus said quietly. Just do it, Axis said. Magnus seated himself cross-legged and reached out with his sight. The psychic currents flowed through him, and visions unfurled. Axis, Magnus said after a long moment, face pale, what you feared is true in one version. If we leave now for Holy Terra, Lionel Johnson will arrive on my world with a contingent of custodies. Prospero will be ripped apart. Our Gene Father's fleet, our legion, reduced to ash. Axis's brow tightened. He had expected Leman Russ. Instead, it was Lionel Johnson who appeared in the vision. Magnus continued. Horus will frame us. He will alter the orders given to the Emperor's household, arranging for Lion, the Custodes, and the Silent Sisters to come here to seize us as traitors. Horus had been plotting. Axis's arrival had already shifted the pieces. The visitor to Prospero would be Lionel Johnson, and Horus's scheme was to brand Axis and Magnus as turncoats. But Horus had not anticipated that Magnus could see even further than he thought. Chapter 219, Reverse Prospero's Tragedy. Given the current situation, Horus's plan was straightforward. Draw the Imperium's counterinsurgency forces into a trap and then stage a landing zone massacre on Istvan Vaith. The Imperium would send Ferris Manus of the Iron Hands, along with the Salamanders and the Raven Guard, a force that looked to be a decisive 7-4 in the Imperium's favor. But Horus had a hidden hand. Only 4 traitor Primarchs had revealed themselves so far, but how many more lurked in the dark? The Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, Word-Bearers, and Night Lords were all cards Horus kept close to his chest. In reality, the balance was closer to 8-3. The only unknown left was whether the Primarch of the 2nd Legion would turn. Magnus, we'll wait until Lionel Johnson arrives, Axis said. Once he learns what really happened, the loyal Space Marines who escaped will tell him and the Adeptus Custodes who the traitors are. I agree, Axis, Magnus replied. This time I will lead the 1,000 Suns to deal with Horus. I never thought he'd go this far. Magnus, be prepared. This won't be easy, Axis warned. Understood. I'll muster the Legion at once, and once Lion arrives, we'll depart for Holy Terra, Magnus said. It's not that simple. We must travel light. Our Legion cannot pass through the webway. Axis added. Why not? The Laughing God's grant of webway access is limited to me personally. Axis shrugged and explained the terms he'd negotiated with the Laughing God. Allowing the Laughing God's servants to ferry the survivors from Istvan III had already been a major exception. Taking Magnus back to Holy Terra would be another. Axis was grateful the clown troupe had helped at all. The Laughing God had agreed to let Axis use the webway, but only Axis. A handful of companions might be overlooked out of courtesy, but not an army of hundreds of thousands of space marines. Then my Legion and the First Legion will make the warp crossing directly, Magnus sighed. Don't worry, Axis said. I'll go to Istvan Faf in person. If Horus wants to play, I'll play his game. I want to see his face when he realizes who he's crossed. If he plans a massacre, we'll see who gets massacred. Half a month passed as Axis and Magnus waited on Prospero. Then a warp fluctuation heralded the arrival of a massive fleet in the system, a host dominated by a Gloriana-class battleship. Lionel Johnson had come. Axis sensed the familiar aura of the Lion's attendant, Lucifer, as the fleet slipped into orbit. The Lion's force docked above Prospero, but rather than spearhead an assault, the Primarch brought only a small contingent, a dozen personal guards, and arrived on the planet in a compact transport shuttle. Long time no see, Lion King, Axis greeted, smiling. Axis, so you really have returned, Lionel Johnson said coldly. Do you know how outrageous the intelligence I received was? Horus claimed you and Magnus betrayed the Emperor. He said you corrupted Magnus and together blew open the webway entrance and grievously wounded the father. The Emperor ordered me to come put down the rebellion. Seeing Axis confirmed a suspicion in the Lion's mind. Something about the journey had been unnaturally calm. The fleet had arrived with ease, too easy. Someone had intended to use him as a pawn. He dared to say that, Axis replied, unbothered. I can't betray the Emperor alone. Axis, it was Horus who betrayed us, Magnus said. Horus falsified the Emperor's orders. I think someone as perceptive as you have already guessed as much. Lionel Johnson's eyes narrowed. I did suspect something was wrong. If the order had been simply to execute you alone, I would have acted without question. But if Axis was included, I would not be enough. That didn't add up. Magnus bristled at the implication and bit his tongue. The Lion could defeat many foes, but Axis had a reputation and a power of his own. Axis, you said Horus launched the Great Heresy. Do you have proof? The Lion demanded. Horus had been the Emperor's most trusted. He had the stature and status to make such an accusation weighty. The Lion could not accept one side's claim without evidence. I brought witnesses, Axis said. On Istvan III, Horus, Fulgrim, Mortarion, and the Primarch of the 11th Legion purged their loyal gene seed offspring. Some escaped, and I brought them to Prospero. They are proof. At Axis's gesture, over 100 ragged but resolute loyalists who had fled Istvan III stepped forward. I am Garo, captain of the 7th Company of the Death Guard, came one voice. I can confirm Horus and the other traitors turned on us. I have recorded footage. Garo handed a data slate to the Lion. The video was painstaking evidence. Betrayal, massacre, the traitors' faces. Lionel Johnson watched with increasing fury. The footage left no room for doubt. Horus, Fulgrim, Mortarion, and the 11th Primarch had turned. Damn them! Lion roared. They tried to use me. I will not let any of those four escape. Axis, we march to the Istvan system now. I will personally see them dead. I will go with you, Axis agreed. Horus will not go unpunished. But first we must go to Holy Terra. Horus used the Intellect Library and a cohort of Chaos Warlocks to blow open the webway there. That's where the Emperor once took us. If Magnus reaches Holy Terra, things can be set right. Before more words could be exchanged, a golden battleship pierced the warp and entered Prospero, a vessel bearing envoys from Holy Terra. Where is Leman Russ, the Wolf King? Why didn't he come with you? Captain General Valdor stepped down from a transport and demanded, Why are you consorting with these traitors? Valdor and his custodes had originally been ordered to fetch Axis and Magnus. Midway through the mission, though, Horus had interfered. The Emperor had been presented with falsified evidence, and the mission's objective had changed. Axis and Magnus were now to be eliminated. Horus had maneuvered Lion L. Johnson into acting against them. "Use your head, Valdor," Axis said bluntly. "Perhaps others do not know what I am capable of, but you should. Would the Emperor issue such a foolish order? And if he did, why are you arriving in a transport to seek death?" Axis's tone was unconcerned, even mocking. Valdor's expression hardened. "Tell me plainly, Axis. Did you betray the Emperor?" Before Axis could answer, Captain Garo stepped forward and presented the same recorded evidence to Valdor. The Captain General accepted the data slate and watched it intently. His face darkened as comprehension set in. "It seems Horus used us," Valdor admitted finally. "Thank the Emperor you came when you did, loyalists. I owe you an apology, Axis." He bowed his head in respect. "We must return to Holy Terra. Only with Magnus's aid can the Emperor hope to repair the webway." "Good, we'll go," Axis said. "By the way, is Leman Russ coming?" Valdor hesitated. "The Emperor ordered Leman Russ to accompany us to retrieve you and Magnus, but I do not know why the Wolf King has not arrived." With that, the Allied host readied itself. The stakes were clear. The webway must be repaired, the truth of the heresy fully exposed, and the traitors who had made their move against the Imperium held to account. The long road back to Holy Terra had begun. Chapter 220, Russ is Trapped, the Raiden's Divine Weapon, and the Rescue Plan. My damned old man still came, but he didn't arrive at Prospero. "Let's review the events, Lord Valdor. State all the missions you received." "Lion L. Johnson, state the orders you were given," Axis said. Lion L. Johnson, Valdor, and the others nodded and recounted the whole sequence to Axis. The sudden surge of psychic energy on Holy Terra that destroyed the webway and forced the Emperor onto the Golden Throne. The Emperor's order for Valdor and the Sisters of Silence to assist Leman Russ in escorting Axis and Magnus back to Holy Terra, explicitly not to apprehend anyone. By contrast, Lion L. Johnson had been ordered by War Master Horus to come to Prospero and suppress the Great Heresy, supposedly started by Axis and Magnus. Valdor and his party had also received another order from Horus during their voyage, and Axis already knew what had followed next. After cross-checking their accounts, Lion L. Johnson realized the truth. The Emperor had not intended for him to come. Horus had unilaterally commanded it. "So that means Russ is very likely trapped in the warp," Axis said. "That's possible," Valdor replied. "That's why he couldn't arrive at Prospero on time. Given Leman Russ's fleet speed, he should have reached Prospero alongside us." Axis frowned. If his old man hadn't arrived on time, it was almost certainly due to Horus's scheming. Horus knew fragments about Axis, but not that Axis had once fought the Emperor, not that Lion L. Johnson had witnessed it, nor about the cultivators. He had set up a situation where Lion L. Johnson and Axis would clash, unless Russ also arrived. So Horus had used other means to trap the Wolf King. "Don't worry, Axis. I'll use my psychic power to help you search," Magnus said, laying a hand on Axis's shoulder. Axis nodded. Magnus's power was still reliable. Many of the Imperial ships docked at Prospero had been guided out of the warp by Magnus over the past few days. His sorcery had been the reason they found safety. He turned to the Sisters of Silence. "Please step back a little," Magnus said. He needed to fully focus his psychic sight, and the Sisters' anti-psychic field would blunt him. They complied at once and withdrew. Magnus sat cross-legged on the ground and poured himself into the warp, opening his senses wide to search for Leman Russ's fleet. If Russ's ships were truly lost in the warp, Magnus could act as a beacon. His power, as a warp demigod, might draw them back. Axis placed one hand on Leman Russ's shoulder and lent his own holy psychic power to Magnus, helping to dispel some of the mists and storms in the warp and sharpen Magnus's vision. The two had worked this way before. Together, they had once contacted the Laughing God and recruited the Clown Troop. Hours passed. Magnus finally opened his eyes and looked at Axis with a grave expression. "I found Leman Russ's fleet," he said. "They have left the warp, but where they reappeared is very bad." "What do you mean?" Axis asked. "Russ's fleet came out at the westernmost border of the Imperium, on the frontier with the Redanen. My sight senses a huge Raiden concentration, on the order of 1 billion troops, hundreds of ships, and even 2 celestial satellite weapons. A terrifying army is massing on the Western Front. You mean Russ is about to engage that Raiden army? Axis asked. Not about to. He's already engaged. The Space Wolves are at an absolute disadvantage. Their fleet cannot match this Raiden host. Axis's smile faltered. He knew Russ had secret weapons. His cultivator offspring, empowered by the spirit tree fruit, gave him hundreds of thousands of combat power. The Space Wolves could be underestimated only at great peril. He has powerful allies. He should be able to handle a fleet like that. Valdor shook his head. You don't understand. Decades ago, the Imperium planned to annihilate the Raiden, but the Raiden revealed a new secret weapon that shocked even the Emperor. The Emperor had to deploy a weapon from Mars to stop them. The two sides then signed a fragile peace. The Raiden developed a new weapon? What is it? Axis asked, incredulous. In the last war, the Raiden had been easily outclassed. How could they now possess something so terrible? Humanoid weapons capable of releasing immense energy, Magnus said. They are walking constructs with devastating combat power. They can tear through void shields and shred battleships. Space Marines and mortals alike can be killed with a single strike. In that war, the Imperium deployed nearly half of the Gene Seed Primarchs. I was there. The result was a bloody stalemate. The Raiden's technology outmatched ours in some respects. Axis stared. That can't be. Where would the Raiden have gotten such power? According to Father, the Raiden likely harnessed fragments of star gods to create these individualized weapons, Valdor said. In the end, Father brought a secret weapon from Mars, a fragment of a cosmic star god called the Void Dragon. Its power is terrifying. It can destroy planets and disrupt star systems. Without it, and the Emperor's deterrence, the Raiden might have invaded on a larger scale long ago. Axis absorbed the news. So if Russ is there alone, he will be defeated. Unless they can retreat, Lionel Johnson said. But if they withdraw, the Western Front may fall. I suspect Horus has struck some agreement with the Raiden. Lionel Johnson had traditionally guarded the western border. His departure left a gap the Raiden could exploit. Russ's army alone could not hold the line against such an overwhelming force. Can you send a psychic message to Russ? Tell them to retreat and rendezvous at Prospero, or return to Holy Terra or Fenris, Axis asked Magnus. We can't let Horus drag Xenos into this. Magnus's face was somber. It's dangerous. The Western Front is wrapped in an immense warp storm. Even if I could send a message, the psychic backlash would be lethal to any psyker who received it. The force that struck Holy Terra could kill, perhaps even Russ. So their only practical option was to send a fleet. Axis felt cornered. Horus had thought several moves ahead. Axis now had two terrible choices: abandon Russ and go to Holy Terra to save the Emperor, or go rescue Russ and risk arriving too late to stop the heresy from spreading. If Axis left Russ, the Great Heresy might be suppressed or completed without him, and Horus would gain the upper hand. If he stayed, the Emperor might fall. Axis, why don't you go save Russ? Magnus said. I'll return to Holy Terra with the Custodes to help Father repair the webway. Axis was the Imperium's most potent force at the moment. His presence could turn the tide. Magnus believed that if Axis and Magnus took the Custodes back to Holy Terra, they could stabilize the webway and blunt the rebellion. The rest of the Imperium, given time, could still put down the traitors. But the Raiden needed to be stopped too. Lionel Johnson rose. No, Axis, you and Magnus should secure Holy Terra. I will personally lead the First Legion to support Leman Russ. It was the Western Front he'd been charged to protect. His redeployment had created the opportunity the Raiden used. With his legion back in the field, and combined with Russ's forces and their cultivator offspring, Lucifer among Lionel Johnson's ranks, and Russ's too, there was a chance to blunt even a deployment of 3 of those Star God fragment weapons, or at least to withdraw in good order. The Western Imperium would not fall so easily. Others nodded in agreement. The best plan was to split resources. Lionel Johnson would go west to rescue Russ, while Axis and Magnus returned to Holy Terra to deal with the bigger catastrophe. I have an idea, Axis said. Magnus and I will travel light and go directly to Holy Terra through the webway. Magnus's legion numbers over 100,000 now. Lionel Johnson, you take 2 legions to support the Wolf King. Because of their perfect gene seed, the Thousand Sons had grown to more than 100,000 battle brothers. The Dark Angels and the Wolf Guard added their own numbers. Nearly 500,000 Space Marines across 3 legions could hold the Raiden at bay. Axis and Magnus would take the Custodes and slip back through the webway to Holy Terra. If they could stabilize the webway and reinforce the Emperor, the rest of the Imperium could be rallied. That's a good plan. Lion, take my legion to support Leman Russ, Magnus agreed.